Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace episode 116, unsifted at sifted.net. Hope you guys have had a great week. I know I did. My Super Bowl pick worked out perfectly.
Just fine.
Yeah, in fact, I exactly called it. You guys didn't see this, but Sam and I had a long conversation about the game before we taped last week's show, and pretty much everything I told him came true.
Yep.
And now in hindsight, I hope that you guys did bet on the Eagles based upon what I told you to do. You could have made some cash. But we're back. Right now, as far as house cleaning stuff is concerned, get your questions in for Pact or Factor. We put that stuff up a couple days ago. We don't have many questions from you guys. I think there's only like 10 or something like that. So get on there, ask questions. I'm shooting with Pactor tomorrow. Please do not ask him any questions about Scotch.
Any questions you don't ask will be filled by Scotch time. Although I'm coming up with some ideas to use for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're trying to work the angle now at this point because I have a feeling that Pactor, no matter what, is going to try to work it into all future episodes of Pactor Factor. So we'll see.
I still say review a Scotch, take a shot of the Scotch, answer a question. By question 6 or 7, gold.
You also have to realize that we shoot 5 episodes at a time.
Oh, yeah.
So imagine...
So we're gonna kill him, basically. Like that's
that could very well happen. Although
maybe the last episode you shoot for the day.
Yeah. But I do think his liver might be able to handle it at this point.
Yeah, he's a pro.
Yeah. For those of you, we are back on at our normal time this week. I don't know if we could call it normal time because we've kind of been later for a while. But it worked out that we could go back to 1 p.m. today. And I know maybe less people will be on the stream, but it allows us to get the archive up for our patrons and our subscribers a lot earlier, a lot quicker. So they're not basically getting it on Saturday morning. Some of them can watch or listen on Friday night. So we're back in our old time slot. We should be here for a while, I think. So count on 1 p.m. Pacific for GameFace going forward in the immediate future anyway. I think that's it, though. Oh, for those of you who maybe weren't watching the show when it was on later and are used to watching it at 1 o'clock, it is February, and if you want to help us out, you can just go to the top of the player, to the right of the top of the player, and subscribe to us with your Twitch Prime subscription. You have to do it every month. It's really a pain. I don't know why it doesn't allow you to just set it and forget it and keep donating. But essentially what it does is if you're a member of Amazon Prime and you connect your accounts on Twitch, you can basically give us $2 for free for doing nothing. So if you are an Amazon Prime subscriber and you're here on Twitch, just click that button up there. It's an easy way to give us $2, and it's actually turned into a pretty good revenue stream for us. So appreciate it if you at least think about it, and I'll appreciate it even more if you click that button. So with that, let's get on with the show. Kind of slow right now, Matt, still.
A little bit.
We are in the doldrums of February, although I feel bad for my family members who are on the East Coast because this winter has just been brutal. So every time I'm like, oh, there's no games to play, I think about like all my friends and family back on the East Coast.
We can't feel our feet.
that are like drawing smiley faces on the frost of their windows. Yeah. So I don't want to complain too much. But we do have enough games to fill out this episode. It may not be the longest episode ever, but
unfortunately I forgot one because every week Shane texts and says like, what'd you play this week? And usually it's like the main thing. But I forgot that I played Dissidia NT this week for like 2 hours, and which should give you an idea of what I thought of it. Yeah. So I'll just say real quick, don't buy Dissidia NT if you're not like the most die-hard Final Fantasy fan ever. I mean, it's kind of the same as the other games, because I played the first 2, except it's clearly used to be an arcade game because it's all based on like just playing the arena matches. And the story mode, you have to earn like materia from grinding matches to unlock the cutscenes, and like there's like 6 cutscenes before you even get to play a match in the story mode, and you have to spend like a thing on each one. And it's like I played like 3 hours. I got to see 3 cutscenes, and I was like, I'm out. Like I'm not, like what? Like your story's not. And everybody's got a real case of everyone's very pretty. Like, even by Final Fantasy standards, like, all the guys are very pretty. They have what Urusei Yatsura back in the day would have called girly eye disease. Just sparkly men, like you wouldn't believe. So I don't know if it might just not be for me.
Yeah, maybe not.
But, yeah, so I played a game and I forgot I played it. that's my review.
Yeah, well, you're not alone. The game is not getting good reviews. It's sitting at like a 6 something on Metacritic.
I mean, the previous two on PSP were super robust and had tons of campaign stuff and very twisty, windy stories and a lot of stuff to do. And this one is very obviously an arcade game that had a campaign just slapped on the side to call it a story. And
they just ported the arcade version and then added some bonus characters. And
my girlfriend's playing it a lot. Like, she's been playing it all week because she likes the characters. But like, she keeps reporting to me like the games on Twitch that have more viewers than Dissidia. It's like
all of them.
Like the Barbie game has like 20 more viewers than Dissidia. Like it's losing out to like stuff I've never heard of. So and it's actually losing out to the mobile version.
It hasn't been promoted very much.
No, but the mobile version has like hundreds more viewers than the actual PS4 version.
All right, well, let's talk about what actually our first topic is this week. It's a game called Subnautica. This game on the other end of the spectrum has been getting sky-high reviews. I tried to play it, Matt. I've played about an hour and a half of it. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I should say is that I think I've come to the conclusion that I just really don't enjoy survival games. I've tried so many, and a lot of them that people said are incredible. I'm just not a fan. I've played Ark Survival Evolved. And the problem I run into with survival games is getting started. There's always kind of this learning period when you first start a survival game of what I need to do, where can I find the resources that I need. You always kind of got to get over this initial hump to build sort of your first tool or whatever, that obviously then that turns into dominoes and you use that tool to create more. This is another game where I started playing it. I ended up searching the sea for like an hour. I could not find the basic stuff I needed to create my first tool, and I just gave up. So then you told me you were playing it, and I was like, okay, we're going to talk about it on the show. So I started investigating the game because I knew already the review scores were really high, and I knew that you said you had played it all week. So I started watching some videos of the game, and holy cow, wow, what that game becomes based upon what I've played. Now, this B-roll is of the first hour of the game, so we're not spoiling a lot for you here on the show. But man, like considering what I played in this early section here, into what ultimately the game becomes and what you can do, it literally blew my mind.
Yeah. So it turned out I actually owned this. I guess I got it in a bundle or something, like in like mid-2016, because it was early access. And
that's a crazy amount of early access.
This is because it got released. It's like a 1.0 finally done. So I was like, I should play this. Oh, I have it. All right, I'll play that. And I really like it. I didn't really have any trouble finding stuff early on. You might want to try...
what I realized by watching videos was that those tubes underwater have resources in them.
Yes.
And I was just swimming through them like, whee!
Yeah, the coral... You got to look closely at everything. You got to hit everything with your knife.
Yeah.
You can cut pieces.
And I think that's where the resources are that I need to build that first tool.
I don't know. See, I'm not sure what tool you're trying to build.
I think it's like
the repair tool?
Yeah.
So I can't remember what... The repair tool took me a while. There was one component I had to find, and I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was copper.
Because I need the repair tool to repair the things in the pod that will then set everything else in motion.
Right. Like, you just got to learn... Like, there's little outcroppings, and you get close enough, it'll say you can break them, and, like, you'll find, like...
I've gathered tons of resources. I've swam all over God's creation.
Everything's in that first little area.
Really?
Yeah, it's the safe shallows, it's called. So I'm at the point, I'm still gathering the resources for it, but I'm about to build the giant submarine, the Cyclops, which lets you go down into the
depths.
Because you have, like, you get, like, a little, like, little jet thing you can ride on, and then you get, like, a little mini sub, and then you can find like a diving mech suit thing, and then the big submarine can actually carry those. So like you can use it as like a mobile base. It can go way down, and then but then like if you go way down, there's some stuff down. There's some crazy stuff.
And the world's completely open, so you can go anywhere you want. And I started diving down into those deep pools, hoping that I would find the parts that I needed. And that's when you have to start managing your oxygen levels.
The stuff I built early on was definitely oxygen tanks and the rebreather and stuff like that. It lets you kind of do whatever you want, and eventually I have a little base now right under the pod, and you get little radio messages that clue you into like where other pods might have fallen, and like so you can go out and find them, and it's really cool. So it's like an alien, your spaceship crashes on an alien world that's mostly water, and like like the ecosystem is fascinating. Like there's all these weird little creatures, and like you can scan them with your little scanner, and like you get a little entry on what they are and how they work and what their place in the world is, and it's fascinating. I risk my life going up to like really dangerous creatures trying to scan them. I'm like, oh, it's a 50-foot eel monster. I'm gonna scan that sucker.
What really made me stop was I ran out of health boost. And I was like, I don't know how to get more. I don't know how to make more. And I was just like, I'm done.
There's a little, in the escape pod, there's a little thing that generates them.
Yeah. And it's on a timer, right? Like a cooldown?
It's like a 30-minute timer. And then you can build another one in your base.
Yeah.
Like it's every problem you run into, there's a way to build something to solve it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of it's trial and error because that's just sort of what these games are. But it all kind of made more or less sense. And I had a lot of fun going to the different biomes. Here's one trick: save the game first. But if you get to a place, you can get to the edge of the world, like the traversal world, which is like basically the continental shelf just drops off into nowhere. And if you keep going, something happens.
Oh, really?
So I recommend doing that. But yeah, and I think it's cool also because like I have a giant, like, weird, like, phobia of, like, deep water, ocean, whatever's underneath there. So, like, this is really cool just because it's like, this is the best horror game I've played. And it's like, oh, I don't want to go down that giant trench, but that's where the gold is. I really dig it. It's
what do you think it is about this that has kind of set it apart from all the other survival games? Because, honestly, I think this game has the highest aggregate score of any survival game I've ever seen.
I think it's because it's like water and it's not just wandering out of a snowbound forest, for one thing. It's a change of pace. The imagination that has gone into creating the alien biomes and the world is really cool. So like you're not just like wandering through wilderness to find like equipment. You're wandering through a place you've never seen before, and it's fascinating just to see it, let alone. So like there's like multiple levels of exploration. So it's like you go to a new area, like this kelp forest, and you're like, oh, that looks really cool. And now you're like looking at all the little creatures, and now you're saying like, oh, what's this? But now you're like, oh, is there a wreck here? What's in the wreck? Is there what can I do with these weird little plants? So I can cut this and I get a vine, I can make something else with it. And as you find new equipment, you get new blueprints. You can cut the right material off something, and like it's like, oh, now you can make this. Like it gave you like it's like it gave you an idea. And then you have to find like wrecks and scan technical equipment to like get the blueprints to build new things, and like all those things are pretty meaningful upgrades for the most part. And like it really has a good pace of like expanding out where you can explore and how you explore and how long you can be underwater, and little things where like you get grab the right fish, and suddenly you can create it's an emergency buoyancy thing. Because like one of the big problems you'll run into is like you get absorbed digging around on the surface. And it's like, oh, you have like 9 seconds of oxygen left.
Yeah, I've died many times trying to get back to the surface.
So like there's a certain fish you can grab, and it'll give you a recipe for a buoyancy device. And like if you realize like, oh, I don't have any time, you pull the buoyancy device and it just rockets you to the surface.
Bends be damned.
Yeah, apparently that's not a thing here. Your suit is really good at not. I don't know.
Well, the first thing I wanted to do is go to the main wreckage, and that's radioactive. It won't let you onto the ship.
You need a suit for that. And that's cool. And you need a suit for that, and then like eventually you get to a point where I need a laser cutter. So that meant you need to find a diamond, and then you go, wear a diamond. It's like that kind of progression of like, I need this thing. Okay, well, I need this thing.
But the game, I mean, based upon what I played, which again wasn't much, the game doesn't really teach you what you're supposed to be doing.
It's a trial and error exploration thing, and
which is another reason why I'm not a big fan of survival games.
Yeah, normally I'm not either, but for some reason this one just hooked me. And every once in a while I'd hit a point where I'm just like, I don't want to sit here and figure out where this is, and I'd turn it off. But I'd come back the next day. So I put like 10, 12 hours in this game.
You think you're going to stick with it?
Yeah, because I want to build that giant submarine and see what's down at the bottom.
Right.
It's and like I love because like the submarine and like you eventually get to build like a moon pool. So like you've got the little like the submarine docks in there, little submarine. Little mini sub docks in there, and you can like power it up, and you have a little modification station that can like make it look better. And like when I was searching through one of the wrecks, I found like a little module. I'm like, oh, I plug it into the mini sub, and now I've got a little inventory thing. I got to expand my inventory space. Like it's very good at like rewarding you for poking around. And a lot of survival games, like you feel like you just kind of you've wasted your time poking around an area, like, oh, I found water, right?
Yeah.
But like this game, like really does that well, and like there's a reward for doing things, and it feels good.
One thing I would say is the water does change things, because in other survival games, a lot of times you can see for 3 or 4 miles ahead. In this game, you really can't. And then, like you're seeing now, it does get dark, and then you have to use a light down at the bottom of the ocean. That's when kind of the horror elements creep in a little bit. The
other thing I would say, if you're starting, like one of the things you can build is a beacon, and you can put a beacon down. It's like 1 copper, 1 titanium, or so. It's very cheap to make. It's a little beacon, and you put it down, and you can rename it whatever you want. You can always see it on your HUD, basically. And I highly, highly recommend building several of those. And every time you find something interesting that you can't fully explore yet, drop that beacon and name it, Deep Cave or whatever you found that you want to come back to. Basically, you can
set up your own waypoints.
Yeah, because otherwise, there's a good chance you'll never find it. And I guarantee you, if there's something you can't get to yet, there's something good in there.
Yeah,
you want to get down there eventually. So,
how much is this game? They sent me a code.
I don't remember.
Probably should look at the price.
Because I didn't buy. I bought it years ago. I must have been in like a Humble Bundle or something. I can't imagine I would have. I don't buy early access stuff really.
Yeah.
Certainly not early access survival games.
It's crazy that you bought this game like 2 years ago.
And
it's just now at version 1.0.
Well, it's early access.
But I will say it's polished.
Yeah,
you can tell it's been in early access for a couple years.
And I think I must have started it up at some point because I had played it before, and I think I just sort of like fiddled around with it and couldn't figure anything out and just like walked away. Those guys suck.
Yeah, they do. Yes, they do.
To walk away from it, and like I'm starting this time for some reason, whatever. I just got it. It clicked. I don't know if they adjusted something or if they changed some things so it made it easier to figure out how everything fits together. But I think it's great. And I'm also like, everybody knows I love scanning things, and like I like alien worlds and stuff. This is sort of like, there's a little bit of No Man's Sky happening here.
It definitely has that vibe for sure.
It's just so damn strange, and there's little mysteries like you piece together, like you get like logs and you kind of find out like and like it turns out there were people who were there before, and like there's bigger mysteries to kind of uncover the deeper you go, and that's compelling as well. And yeah, if you have any, and there's a mode if you really don't like the survival stuff, because in the standard game, like there's all the normal stuff with survival. There's hunger and thirst, and you have to build things and repair things and keep your life up and keep your oxygen up. There is a mode where there's no hunger and no thirst, which is
right up my alley.
Which you might want to try that one. It's probably more fun if you don't want to like just spend all your time trying to purify water.
Yeah.
And then there's another mode.
That's the other thing I ran out of was water.
Yeah. There's another mode where where it's just there's no limit. You can build anything. You can just mess around. Like a creative mode, and like that I didn't use that, but I feel like that might be helpful if you're trying to figure out like, oh, what does this do? How does this work with no penalty? And kind of seeing what does this look. That's another thing I found useful when I end up with a new resource or something, is dropping it and seeing what it looks like, so I know what I'm looking for later.
Oh, interesting.
If I could deconstruct something and,
right.
I'm like, okay, what does titanium look like? Okay, it's a little like kind of dark asterisk kind of thing. Yeah. Like, okay, so I know what I'm looking at now. Yeah, if you have any interest in survival stuff and in managing your oxygen levels, like this game is really good. Like
well, it comes out in a good spot, because if you're not playing Monster Hunter World right now, you're probably looking for something to play.
Yeah.
And this is time consuming, this game.
Yeah, time
you'll get a lot of value out of it.
Like there are a couple nights this week where suddenly it was 3 a.m. Yeah. And I was like, what? Go in to play this after dinner, and it's just like, oh, it's 2 a.m.
Next thing you know, it's 5 hours later. Yeah.
It hooks you. At least it hooks me. Like it one more dive, one more trip out, one more. It's that treadmill of like, oh, I got the thing I needed. That let me build the thing I wanted to build.
Where can
now
I
get to go use this?
Right.
Oh, that let me find this thing, and now I can. Oh, I bet I can do that. It snowballs.
The breadcrumb trail for games like this is paramount. It's really important to keep you going. And I would say, like I could tell already. Like I could see the sequence of events I needed to complete. Mm. Which in a lot of like Ark Survival Evolved. Have you ever played that?
I tried.
Like just surviving the first 5 minutes of that game, depending on where you spawn, could be nearly impossible. it was just like a mad scramble to basically chop down a tree, create a fire so you don't freeze to death, like right away. And this game does ease you into it a lot more than that. It's not immediately urgent right out of the gate that you need resources or you're going to die.
Yeah, once you figure out how like kind of how water works and everything, like in terms of like purified water, like it's pretty easy to keep on top of it as long as you plan ahead. Like you always want to have water on you. You can't and you can't like don't save it to the last minute. Like I did that once where I tried to go like, oh, I'll just go back and purify some water, and I died of thirst while I was purifying the water because it didn't happen fast enough. And like death isn't a big deal in this game. If you're out somewhere, you'll lose some items, but if you go back, they're still there.
Yeah.
There's some neat things in this. Like I definitely recommend it if you don't like auto hate this kind of game.
Let me check. Actually, I'm going to look really quickly to see how much this is, so we inform our folks about it. I think it's probably, I'm guessing $30.
Maybe. It seems like it's probably 25 or 30.
Is it coming out for consoles as well, Matt?
Wouldn't surprise me. But I don't think there's anything announced for it, but it would be a very smart console release, I think.
Let's see. Yeah, well, actually, it's just PC, Mac, and Xbox One.
Oh, okay.
So
I don't think it's out for Xbox One.
Although, based upon how well it's doing, I have a feeling...
Although Google says PlayStation 4.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. It's got to be coming. $24.99 on Steam.
Okay. That's not bad. I mean...
I've spent $25 on way dumber things.
I think we all have, without a doubt. So that's not bad. $25. I mean, most reports are saying they've got dozens and dozens of hours out of this.
Yeah.
So
I would probably be willing to play it again, frankly. Like even and I don't say that about survival games much, but like I enjoy kind of poking around this world, and I would be interested to see how fast I could find all the stuff I'd need to build the giant submarine and stuff like that. It's my kind of thing.
All right. Let's move on. We're going to talk next about some big news that released for Red Dead Redemption 2 this week. I think we're going to get stuff like this.
Yeah, there's going to be
pretty
a
regularly.
Constant drip feed, I would say.
This was a leak, by the way. This was not something that was officially announced by Rockstar.
Doesn't happen much with
No,
Rockstar.
it really doesn't. But the big news is that there's going to be a Battle Royale mode. Actually, probably the bigger news is that the multiplayer is going to be crazy. There's tons and tons of modes that were not announced, but leaked. And one of which is a Battle Royale mode. Another one is like a Grab the Gold mode. So it looks like multiplayer is going to be a big part of it. The other thing that was announced was a first-person mode for the game where you can play in first person.
Nah.
You won't play in first person?
Nah.
No?
I like seeing the character and seeing the world more. Not like in general, but I just find like I find like the Rockstar GTA style games play fine in third person. I don't need a first person mode.
Yeah, because there was first person in GTA 5, right?
Yeah. Like, sure. I mean, I never use that either. I mean, sure, put one in. Like if people want to use it, awesome. More options are always good.
I prefer the shooting from that perspective.
Yeah, because
that is one weakness in Rockstar's games that has kind of always been there is shooting.
But it's better than it used to be.
It is.
And,
I mean, it used to be atrocious, and now it's passable.
Go try to play Vice City again.
Yeah, or any of the early GTAs.
San Andreas still works so well.
Early games were basically just a lock-on system where it just locked on.
Well, San Andreas and I mean the PC versions gave you mouse control, so that's more playable. But you go back to like the PlayStation 2 version of those games, and you're like, how did we do? And I remember the arguments over that where people were like, no, it's fine, it's great, it's awesome. It's like, no, it was never,
it's really not.
Never fine.
It really wasn't. Because what it do is lock on, and it will give you like the ability to kind of fine-tune the aim on the enemy. So you just push up slightly to get a headshot or whatever. And then finally they ended up giving you full control like any other third-person shooter. Still, I don't think it's great. At least not in GTA 5, I didn't think it was great. But
it was all right. It worked. But like, the problem is like you're very squishy in those games. Like you can die very quickly.
Yeah, it's true.
Even replaying Red Dead Redemption last year, I noticed that was I was almost out of health after like a couple of shots. You get caught flat-footed, and you're like, well, you better hope some cover's nearby because otherwise you're dead.
Yeah. So they announced the Battle Royale mode the same week that Fortnite officially passes PUBG in concurrent players. The baton has officially been passed.
I can definitely see that working very well in Red Dead Redemption. I assume you will not parachute in. Although...
How? Well, I mean, have you seen any of the GTA Online stuff?
Yeah, I don't know.
Who knows what they'll do?
Like, maybe you'll ride in on bone dragons. Who knows? I mean, at this rate,
you're right. I mean, all bets are off. Yeah. But I do wonder though how players will drop into the battlefield. I also wonder too if that is why the game was delayed.
Yeah, it's not a bad theory.
I mean, if you look at what Fortnite's done in just a matter of a couple months,
or at the very least, it could be a thing where they're like, maybe they were thinking about adding it later, and they're like, you know what?
Let's get better to launch. Yeah, it could be. Who knows? We're just totally
speculating. But like, if there's one thing you might want to delay your game a few months for, it's probably putting this mode in.
Yeah, but it sounds as if the template that's been laid down by GTA 5 is going to continue on in all of Rockstar's games going forward. And
who hasn't wanted to play a Battle Royale mode where you can be killed by a cougar at any moment?
Yeah. Well, that's true. The wildlife could become a big part of it. That's an angle of Battle Royale that hasn't really been broached yet. So that could give it sort of its own slant. But I think what we can do is look at what we've seen from GTA Online and kind of assume that that's the type of thing we're going to get from Red Dead 2.
And you'll be able to buy little treasure chests full of currency or whatever. Like
and you'll be able to buy like some crazy stagecoach for like 5 billion
and like the
shekels or something.
The 4 horses of the apocalypse. And there'll be weird
You're right.
stuff.
You'll be able to buy like crazy expensive horses. And did that really resonate with you? Does GTA Online do it for you?
No, I didn't like it at first, and then I went back to it with my friends after the Heist expansion went up, and we really enjoyed that and played with that a lot, because that basically gave us a way to earn enough money in-game to buy good stuff to permanently have, and it was like, until then, we were you just felt like you were struggling along with the stupid PvP stuff. There was nothing you could really do to earn a lot of money quickly. But like the heist stuff, all of a sudden you're making millions. Like if you're playing these heists well, and we were pretty good at it, and it became a lot more fun then. Because then like we could have these cars, or one of my friends bought the tank and like would drive around in the tank, and one of them bought like the attack helicopter and would fly around. Like if we were like in a public game and people were like being jerks, like I'd be like, hey, like we got this guy, and he'd pull out the helicopter and fly and just bombard them until they left the game.
See, it's cool when you're on the good side of it, but what really turned me off to GTA Online, first of all, was the whole ATM thing.
That they changed.
Yeah, right. They did.
So you can do that through your phone now.
Yeah, and I think actually it may have come very quickly, that change.
Maybe.
But it wasn't even just that. I mean, I felt like it was a playground for griefers.
Yeah,
in general.
Early on, that's definitely what it was.
Because
that's why we stopped playing it. And like I remember, when we went back for the heist thing, we weren't looking forward to that. And we made a bunch of money. We're like, we got to get back to the ATM. And some guy killed one of my friends and took his money. And he's like, and like he basically, because you could hear people, like he's like, what, he messaged him or he talked to him. I don't remember. I wasn't there, but like he messaged him or something and said, why do you have this much money on you? And the guy, he's like, well, because I was trying to get to the ATM. He's like, you don't have to do that anymore, dumbass.
Yeah, pull up your cell phone.
Because we didn't know. We didn't know they changed that. And it was the quality of life improvements between launch and the heist update were substantial.
I mean, that's one thing. Rockstar did respond very quickly to complaints. But the other issue that I had with GTA Online was that what I like to do online with Grand Theft Auto is just get friends together and just have fun. Just set up crazy stunts and you can't do that because you always have other people like messing with you. There's some dude
you can now. Like we used to play custom modes and like private games or whatever, and that was fine. Like we spent weeks at one, but it was like somebody made up this mode where like it's a giant floating platform, and one team is on the platform and the other team has infinitely spawning like McLarens or like super sports cars around the corner, and basically, the idea is like the one team drives the cars and goes off these ramps and tries to hit the guys on the floating platform and knock them off.
It's like bowling.
And the people on the floating platforms have rocket launchers. And like, so you're trying to shoot the cars as they fly up, and like, there'd be just things where you're flipping over and like dodge somebody like corkscrewed around a rocket and like caught a guy with a tire and like he I mean, we played that for weeks.
Was that the PC version or console version?
That was PS4. Because there was at some point you could get like game modes, like game mods, basically that people created in the editor, and you could pick them as download them or whatever and play them as modes. So we would play that over and over and over again.
Like I said, I have not played it in forever.
Like it's
like literally
very different.
Like a month and a half or 2 months after it initially came out was the last time I touched it.
By the time between that and like the Heist update, it was a completely different game, and I'm sure it's even different now. I haven't played it since the heyday of the Heist update, and I'm sure with the new update, it's even crazier and weirder.
So it's a good example of where Rockstar can learn from one game and then import that knowledge over to the next.
Sure, they really stuck with it.
Yeah, so hopefully Red Dead 2 doesn't go through the growing pains that GTA
I feel like
5
they learned a lot from GTA Online, and I feel like obviously
learned how to make a lot of money.
Yeah, well, it's not going to be perfect, but I think it'll start further ahead than GTA Online did.
So are you cool with all the leaks that came out, all the information?
As long as that single-player game's still there, I don't care.
Yeah. Like it's just icing on the cake, actually. Yeah.
Like, I'm there for the campaign.
Yeah, it's like I wouldn't have regretted buying Grand Theft Auto 5 for full price, even though I wasn't a huge fan of GTA Online, like... Because I played the base game for like 60 or 70 hours.
My main thing with GTA Online is a lot of the stuff in GTA Online to me feels clearly adapted from single-player content. Like, I feel like the heist stuff was supposed to be part of the single-player game. Because the whole single-player game thing, like, you get the mechanics of, like, hiring the team, and the team can upgrade their abilities. And, like, you do, like, 3 heists. Like, none of that ever matters. Like, the way they set up the heist thing feels like this is the meat of the game. You're going to be doing this a lot. You're going to be building a team. You're going to do, like, 9, 10 of these, and it's going to be,
there wasn't.
You're going to end up, what this is going to end up being is going to matter. And, like, it wasn't. It feels to me like...
They were the best parts of the game.
Yeah. It feels like they lifted that out of the game and made it an online mode. And... like, so part of me wishes that had been single-player content. I think that's also probably true.
So that's the big question. Would you rather have these online modes, or would you rather have single-player DLC?
I'd rather have single-player DLC, but I'm probably a minority.
Because you're taking out what Rockstar does really well, which is create characters and writing and scenarios. And
I mean, I had a good time playing the heist stuff. I just wish I didn't need 3 other people to do it.
Right.
Because while I did enjoy that, like, I also would have enjoyed like what they're setting up with Lester in the single-player campaign, where like, I gotta plan this, and I have a team, and I gotta decide who to bring in for each heist, and like which one, you need this expertise for this, but that never happens. It's all story.
Well, you're gonna rob banks in Red Dead 2, and there'll be a lot of elements.
I mean, hopefully that kind of mechanic is brought into the single-player game as well as the multiplayer, because I think that's a fun thing to do. But sometimes I don't want to find 3 other people to do that.
Exactly. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about E3, which is not all that far away.
No, it's like 120 days or something.
It's just a few months away. E3 finally opened up media registration this week and also kind of announced some changes that are coming to the show. Probably the biggest change to E3 this year is that it's kind of found, as the graphic says, a happy medium. Last year it opened it up to the public for the first time, which we thought was a great idea, and we have been talking about it for years, that that's something E3 needed to do. However, it kind of went too far the other direction.
Well, they just didn't plan around the idea that all of a sudden you're letting in thousands more people than you did before.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, the floor was chaos.
It was yeah.
And like, it was the first time, I mean, I'd been to what, like 18 or 19 of these things? 19. I think last year was my 19th E3. And it was the first time ever I skipped a day on the floor. I didn't go to the floor on the last day, or one of the days.
I was there.
And like, it was either...
and it was good. It was the best day on the floor, but it was still way more crowded than most Fridays.
Yeah, it was really crazy. And for a while there, it was pretty, Thursday, the last day, Thursday, used to be, for the last few years, kind of the good day for getting to see things, because once they cracked down on photo IDs for badges, like, because that was the kind of the tradition, was like the bigwigs would go home on Wednesday night and they'd hand their badges to the underlings.
Yeah.
And then those people would go on Thursday. So now you couldn't do that anymore, and like Thursday became sort of dead. It was.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember a couple years ago, like we were standing around in a major intersection, big intersection in like the main room, and like there was just nobody anywhere. We've seen everything, and I can understand if you're running E3, you don't want that to happen. So might as well let some people in, but like they just didn't plan. I've seen conventions at the LA Convention Center that don't feel like that.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way. Like you got to redesign the walkways. You got to redesign how the booths are laid out. That's a major change, and they didn't take that into consideration.
If you think about it, Matt, E3 has been the same forever.
Yeah.
My first E3 to the last year's E3, the way the booths are set up.
Yeah, the only thing that changes where the booths go is somebody going out of business.
Right. Yeah. Somebody either goes out of business or just decides they don't want to spend the money. But otherwise, and the games change in the booths, and the booths change, but the layout, where everything is, the traffic patterns, none of that has ever changed. No. But the big change this year is they've kind of found the happy medium.
Or so they think.
We'll see how it goes. So basically how it works is every day but the last day of the show, industry will have 3 hours at the beginning of the day all to themselves. So it's like the old E3 for the first 3 hours of every day, and then the public comes in later. How do you think that's going to work, Matt?
It's not enough time to do what people need to do, but it's better than nothing.
Exactly. That's why I said happy medium, because I don't think there's any way they're going to go back to just industry only. I don't see that happening.
And I think the argument can be made
I don't think they should.
Yeah. And I think making Thursday sort of the big public day is wise, because that's, a lot of industry folks take off after when, Thursday's been traditionally sort of the quiet day for a long time. At the very least, you knew that a lot of the bigwigs were gone. But if you needed to talk to whoever, you got to talk to them by Wednesday night.
They're gone. They're down the street sitting at a bar.
That too. Or they're at the Marriott.
Right.
A lot of people I know don't even leave the Marriott bar area anymore. All the biz dev stuff is done there.
Right.
Now. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully it works out. Definitely there were people just couldn't get their work done last year.
Yeah.
Even you're seeing the Nintendo booth here. Like at some point, I think it was I can't remember.
Here's the big change, man.
I think it was IGN or something. Basically Reggie and they were 20 minutes late getting for their live interview, and they're like, we couldn't get out of our booth. We're sorry. It was just there's nothing they can do.
Really the big change for us from our perspective is, one, you got to make sure you get there right as soon as it starts. But two, we'll be able to play pretty much anything we want. Mm-hmm. Because those first few hours is just going to be us, and you can kind of schedule your week out and say, I need to play these 40 games or whatever. And if you're smart about it, with 3 hours at the beginning of the show where you're not fighting against the crowds, you should be able to see pretty much everything you want to see and play pretty much everything you want to play. So I feel like E3's done a pretty good job striking a balance between the public and the industry. And then the other thing of it, too, is that they've changed how they're doing the general public passes. So those have not gone on sale yet. Media registration, industry registration is up. General public cannot register yet. But when they do, the first 1,000 passes are $149. And then everything after that is $249.
Wow.
Yeah, so they definitely want people to... And it's weird for you to announce that, and then not announce the exact day and time that those are going on sale. It seems a little odd how they ended up announcing it, but they're trying to incentivize people to jump in early to make sure that they're not kind of left twisting in the wind, so to speak. But I think overall, smart. I kind of figured they'd kind of go all in one direction and then dial it back a little bit. I will say this. You're seeing B-roll from E3 last year right now. It was a lot more lively. Yeah. The last couple of years, it had almost gotten a little bit embarrassing at times when you walk in there. Because what people don't realize about E3 is you get a lot of people going to E3 that really don't care about E3. So when I was at Viacom, every year my boss would say, hey, there's all these other Viacom bigwigs from New York who want to go to E3, but they don't want to deal with E3. They want to see all the good stuff in 2 hours. And
so just like everyone else who goes to E3.
Pretty much, yeah. So, but because we worked out in LA, they worked out in New York, and they were really the gatekeepers to what we did. They held our budgets and figured out how much money they were going to give GT every year to create content and all the other stuff that we did. And so it was important for us to impress these folks and make them feel like the gaming industry is a big deal and it's something worth being a part of, particularly towards the end of GT, where we are starting to sense them pulling back from GT and gaming and not really want to support us anymore. It became very important for us to impress them. So I would set it up with all the PR people, appointments to see the best game in their booth, and I'd take them on a 2-hour tour of the show floor and let them play all the big stuff. What happened, though, usually is that they wouldn't want to do it until Thursday. And so they'd show up, and there was, like, nobody on the show floor. Like, everyone's hungover or whatever, they're not there. So they're walking around with me. This is supposed to be this big VIP tour that only they were going to get, that they got this exclusive access to these games that other people had to wait hours to see, blah, blah, blah. And they walk in there, and there's nobody there. And there are hundreds, maybe even thousands of people at E3 that are in the same position that I was in at Viacom, trying to show the people who pull the strings how important gaming is, how big gaming is. And they would walk into the show and be like, "Really? This is as big as gaming gets?"
That's what you say. No, this is exclusive. It's very exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would say to them. But they're like, "How exclusive is this? There's no one else waiting in line." So there's lots of people who are in that position where they have like the CEO or the CFO of their corporation coming in to look at the show for a couple hours. You need to really impress them so that they think gaming is really happening. And the way the show was for the last few years before they let the public in, that spectacle wasn't there. So I think this is good for a number of reasons. I think the bigger the spectacle, the more mainstream coverage you get. I mean, I just think they went a little overboard last year. They're reeling it in this year. I think that they found a sweet spot. But as always, we will never know that until we step foot on the show floor for the first time. So, so I think headed in the right direction at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do?
We can't do anything. They don't ask us.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I would not really probably want to pay $250 to go to E3.
Not worth it. Yeah, because, I mean, here's the thing. Like, so now the public has less time to see this stuff. So how big now is the line going to be for whatever Nintendo's big thing is this year, which is always the longest line. Whatever Nintendo's
doesn't matter what it is.
Doesn't matter what it is. It's always the longest line.
Could be Animal Crossing slap in the face. Like, people will be lined up out the door.
So it's going to be harder to
slap me in the face, Tom
like
Nook.
That.
Come on.
Yeah, you have less time, the same amount of people. It's going to be harder to get in to see that stuff. Charging $200 and some for that's steep. But I don't know. If somebody decides to come to LA, make a vacation out of it, maybe go to E3 for a day or two.
You can do it, but it's like also, I don't know. I'm also comparing it to like the old days when, like, I mean, I still didn't pay to get it. It was like there was a point at which you could go to E3 and, like, if you were lucky, you could win a wave bird. Or I won a wave bird once.
Yeah.
From like this like little Wheel of Fortune thing Nintendo was doing. I'm just like, I walked out with a fucking wave bird. Like, that's great. Like, you used to come out with like some actual stuff and like
that actually had value. Yeah.
It was
now it's like foam Mario.
Not huge value, but it was like something that like felt like you'd been somewhere no one else got to see. And it was meaningful. The other thing, and people would be like, "Where'd you get that?" It's like, "Oh, I got it at E3." You know?
Yeah, you don't really say that anymore.
There isn't anything like that anymore.
Well, now they did give out those Mario foam hats.
Yeah.
That ended up selling on eBay for like $70, and they probably cost like $1 to make or something.
Yeah, if you get the right swag, I guess you can like pay for your trip a little bit, but like, man, it's so expensive. I mean, just you get in a hotel downtown, and like,
I mean, the other thing too is if you don't get a hotel, if you didn't get a hotel 5 months ago, you're going to be staying out where I live in West LA,
you're in the West Side,
you're in Santa Monica, or you're like north, like near Burbank or whatever. So
that's a long Uber.
Yeah, it's hard to be spontaneous and do E3 well, I guess is the best way to put it.
At least downtown is more lively and has a lot better places to eat than it used to be. It used to be like visiting Escape from New York or something, and now it's like, let's go on the art walk. You know, it's a very different downtown than when we used to go back in the old days.
Yeah, it used to be you went for a walk, you'd end up with like a syringe, in your foot. So it's definitely cleaned it up a lot down there.
I remember when because Ubisoft has their press has always had their press thing in this theater like downtown, a ways away from the convention center. And I remember when they first started it, some of the UB people were like, "Oh, we're going to take a cab."
Yeah, don't
walk to the. It's like, but now you could walk there.
Fine.
Like you could pick up a bacon wrapped hot dog and a bouquet of flowers on the way. It's totally
or
different.
while you're waiting in line to get in.
Yeah.
Yeah, downtown LA has changed a lot since I've lived here, and I've been here like 12 years, and it's like night and day to compare.
Oh, the gentrification is real, my friend.
Although going down there at night still.
That's weird.
Be careful.
It's a block.
If you come to LA,
it's a block-to-block game.
Yeah.
And don't walk under overpasses without being aware of your surroundings. But also like, and we'll see it for sure this year because I don't go to the convention center much. Believe it or not, like not a huge destination unless you're going to see Lakers games, basically.
Yeah.
There's all these buildings across the street from it. It used to be just parking lots across the street. Now, like they were under construction last year, but now they're almost done. Like these giant condos or something. I don't know.
They'll put condos anywhere they can in LA right now. Literally every corner.
They're building that place up in ways that you wouldn't think there would be room to do in downtown LA, but it's happening.
And oddly enough, the law of supply and demand doesn't seem to be applying to housing because there's more housing than ever, and the prices just keep going up.
Right. Well, they keep pricing them out of, it's like, oh, people need more housing. Yeah, that doesn't mean more $3,000 a month condos, bro. Like, it means a place to live for normal people who need you can't spend the GNP of a small country on rent. You know, like, but that's a whole different.
That's a whole other story.
It's a whole different side of living in Los Angeles.
But anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a rundown on E3 in case some of you are considering coming to the show. You can find a hotel. Don't just write it off.
Yeah, there's places.
You'll have to stay a little ways out.
Airbnb it or something. I'm sure there's good places.
And you may have to take an Uber or a Lyft to the show, which in LA, they're everywhere. So.
And also, that's the way to do it. I haven't driven myself to E3 since ride sharing started. If you don't have to have a car in downtown LA, don't
bring one.
Like, it sucks.
But look, if enough of you guys end up coming out, maybe we could do a little get-together after the show one night. We could get together and have some beers or whatever. As always, if you're into that, just reach out to me on the site. I am at Shane. So let's move on. We're going to talk next about a game I have been playing for the last few days. I tried to play Subnautica, did not connect with me. However, this game most definitely did. Hunt Showdown. This is a game coming out of E3 last year. I said keep an eye on this game as something different. It's something unique. Even in the asymmetrical shooter world, it's something different and unique. And then consequently, it started getting a lot of nominations for Best of E3 and even won some awards. I think it may have been like PC Gamer's Game of the Show or something like that. Yeah. There was at least one publication that really went all in on it. And it is in a closed alpha right now. And I found out there's a closed alpha going on. And I usually do not beg with PR people, but I legitimately begged for code to get into this closed alpha. If those of you who haven't been to the site for the last couple of days, we just published a play view of this that goes pretty in-depth on the game, but it is like all play views. It's part video preview, part let's play. So I'm going to go dive a little bit deeper and maybe take some questions from you, Matt, about the game. I got you a code as well. You have not had a chance to play it, though, right? I
haven't played it yet. I was underwater.
Yep. So it's a good thing that I did decide to play this. And as you guys know, if you've watched GameFace or if you've followed me through the years, I am a big, big horror fan. I love horror movies. I've been a little gorehound since I was like 8 years old. So I love games like this. And I would say if you are the type of person who gets squeamish playing scary games, don't go anywhere near this game. I'm not kidding. This game is intense. Pretty much from the moment the match starts until the moment you die or you take down the boss. I will say that the game is different than I thought. So let me just give you kind of a quick rundown of the gameplay loop. So when you start, you go into matchmaking. You don't create your own character in this game and then build up your character. You get what are called recruits. So when you first boot it up, they give you a little bit of money and they give you the option of 3 different characters to choose from. And each one has a price you have to pay to essentially rent that player. And each character or recruit has different attributes. They have different weapons, different things devices that they can use. They have different buffs and things like that. So you choose which one you want, you pay the money, and then that is your player for the game. Then you go into matchmaking. You get matched up with one other player. So the whole game is teams of 2, which I love because this game could very easily turn into a grief fest. So you only need one person that you can trust to join up and play. And I will say all the people who are on the alpha are amazing. I did not run into one jerk the whole time I've been playing this, and I played it for 3 or 4 days. So you team up with one other person, you spawn into the world, and in this world there are teams of 2 all over the map. Basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to find a boss. In some ways it's a boss rush game. There's one boss on the map, and all the teams are trying to be the first one to find it and then kill it. And so to find the boss, the map is pretty large. It's not quite PUBG size, maybe a half of the size of a PUBG map, something like that. And what happens is you have this ability called Dark Sight. And you push a button and you go into this spiritual world. And what it does is it shows you where clues are. And they appear, and you can see right there, I'm kind of looking up over the hill where the clue is. There are these blue globules of light. And you just basically start making your way towards those clues. Now, the clues are the same for every team. So every team is using Darksight and finding the clues, and they're trying to get to the clue. Because what happens is when you get to a clue and you activate it, it will darken parts of the map and to show you that, hey, the boss is not in this part of the map. But as you might also guess, you get like bottlenecks at the clues because all the teams are going to the clues trying to get the clue and then trying to go to the next one until it's narrowed down and it shows you exactly where the boss is. So there are 3 different clues that you have to find in each match. Once you find the third one, literally an icon on the map says the boss is right here, and you go to that house. So along the way, you're having these interactions with other teams. Sometimes you get killed. A lot of the games will end at like the first clue because you'll come rolling in. Some dude will be in a bush, like waiting for you to come show up, and he'll just cap you or whatever.
Fortnite style.
But you can't. But here's the thing: you can't just kill the other teams because ultimately you have to fight the boss at the end, and the bosses are total bullet sponges. Like you have to fill them full of lead to drop them. So there's this uneasy alliance that you have with other teams while you're playing the game because you realize you may actually need their help to beat the boss. Just 2 people trying to take down a boss, I never managed to do it with just 2 people. So it's possible probably. Maybe once you upgrade and get better weapons, it'll be easier. But we were never able to do it as just 2 players to take down the boss. And so once you do manage to take, and there's one of the clues right there. And sometimes they'll have guys camping there. Jump scares are pretty much non-existent in the game. They're pretty respectful with how they do that stuff. But this was one case where, oh my gosh, there's a clue. And you come around the corner and a dude pops up. So you can see, and maybe I'll even show in this footage. So yeah, you can see how it closes off part of the map. And now you know that southern side of the map is where the boss is. Get one more clue, it'll show you the exact house that the boss is in. So once you find the boss, you have to crank open the door and you go into the building where you're going to fight the boss. And while you're in there, other teams can show up because once you discover the boss, it sends a signal out to all the other teams saying, hey, a team has found the boss. And they can look on their map and it'll show them where the boss is. So as soon as you go into that room, you have to expect that the other teams are going to then rush in and try to either kill you and kill the boss or help you kill the boss. Again, it's like an uneasy alliance. The other thing you have to keep in mind while you're playing is that other players can hear you. So there's enemies scattered all over the map, just random zombie-like creatures, some really big creatures, dogs. And you can choose whether you want to fight them or not. Sometimes they're fast enough that they'll track you down and you kind of have to fight them. But you can try to kind of go stealth and like avoid them if you want to. But if you talk to your teammate, which is very, very important, everything can hear you. The enemies can hear you. The other teams can hear you. If you fire your gun, the other team can hear you and come looking for you. So, like in this game, a lot of games I just leave the mic on all the time. In this game, I don't do that. I have push to talk enabled so that it's not picking up when my wife comes in and says, Shane, what are we having for dinner or whatever? Because it'll literally like draw people to you. So there's all these kind of mind games going on, and then ultimately one team finds the boss. And once that happens, everyone's alerted. Here's where the boss is, and all the teams come rushing into the boss space. Now,
so you don't, when you find the clues, only your team gets to see that, yeah? Or does it do that for everybody?
Until somebody finds the boss. Okay. Yeah. So it's not, if somebody else finds a clue, it doesn't cut off a piece of the map for you. You have to do it all yourself until someone finds the boss. And at that point, the map basically is irrelevant. It shows you exactly where it is, and then you try to run and get there before they can take the boss out. So from your perspective, unless you're in one of these uneasy alliances where you're working with another team, you want to get there first. You want to drop the boss as quickly as possible, and then you want to set up, because once you take down the boss, it's not over. You have a period of time where you basically have to defend. So in this case, it turns into kind of like a horde mode, where the other teams start coming to where you fought the boss, and you have to defend that location for a period of time. After you defend the location for a period of time, then you have to take the loot and you have to extract it, a lot like the Division, like the Dark Zone in the Division. And so if you're the team who decided not to help fight the boss, or didn't fight the boss and didn't kill the boss, or maybe you missed that horde mode section of the game, you can always just go and camp at the extraction point. So as a player, you're never free of tension in this game. The way they have designed it is really brilliant. Like, when you are creeping up towards that extraction point with the bounty, you are just on pins and needles because you're like, because you don't know. It never tells you like all the other teams are dead. You never know if all the other teams have been eliminated or not. So you're always on pins and needles walking to that extraction point, waiting to sort of get your loot. The other things I like about it is it encourages team play. If your partner survives till the end with you, you both get bonuses, so you're incentivized to keep your teammate alive, which cuts down on griefing significantly. This game would be kind of ripe for griefing, I will say that, if you don't end up partnered with somebody who is interested in succeeding at the game, because all someone has to do is just fire their gun 6 times, and all the other teams around you will know where you are, and they can come and kill you. So there's like that balance to walk. It's like, I don't want to kill too many of the other teams because we may need them at the end, but I don't want there to be everybody left because then it just turns into a free-for-all at the end. We could kill the boss, and they could come in and swoop up the loot and take it to the extraction point and get all the cash. So it's like this mental gymnastics thing. You're always thinking in the back of your mind, like, is someone following us? And then you get mixed in with the wildlife and the monsters that are on the map. It is an intense game. I never got to play in the daylight. Every map that I played was in the dark. I don't know if maybe they had daylight maps. I know there are daylight maps. I don't know if maybe they cycled those out of the alpha by the time I started playing them or whatever, but every game I played was at night. And I know it's probably hard for you guys to see a lot of this B-roll. But if you're watching the archive of this, I highly recommend turning down the lights while you're watching this part of the show to see the detail, because the game is also flipping gorgeous. It's made by Crytek. And you can see Crytek's pedigree throughout the entire thing. The lighting and everything in it is just incredible. I am having a blast with this. It doesn't seem like this game is getting anywhere near the hype that it should be getting. Here's a boss fight, by the way. So this is one of the spider boss. And you're basically in this barn fighting this spider. And just the pitter-patter of the spider's feet. The audio in this game is incredible. The sound design is incredible. The spatial audio for the surround sound is absolutely amazing. Like, the spider goes on all 4 walls, and he's very fast. So you could lose sight of him, but the surround sound actually tells you where he is, and sometimes you can hear him, like pattering up behind you. You're like, oh my god, you turn around, like, right there he is, and I'm having a blast with this game. I really, really like it. I don't want the alpha to end. I don't want to stop playing it. I feel like people should be paying attention to this game. There hasn't been a lot of media for it. Crytek, in my opinion, has not done a great job promoting the game. But
it doesn't help that it's PC only.
Yeah, for now. So the game started development like 5 years ago. It's been in development for a long time. It was originally announced as a free-to-play game. Crytek has since walked back on that. It is not going to be free-to-play. They haven't announced how much it's going to cost. My guess is probably $20 maybe. And then maybe they get you with microtransactions to upgrade gear and stuff like that. Because it's still there. Like, you know, the whole gear upgrade system and everything is still in there. But yeah, it's just not been marketing or promoting this game very well, in my opinion. So I do recommend, if you're looking for something different and you like horror games, I would go to its game page on Sifted and I would follow this game. You're not going to get bombarded with media because they aren't putting out a ton of it, but you'll be kept up to date on console versions if they're eventually announced. Like right now, Crytek's official line is possibly PS4 and Xbox One. But only PC for now, so we don't know that yet. There's no release date for it yet.
But they like money, so I guess console versions are in the cards.
I would think. I honestly think that this game has an opportunity to become like huge. But they're not marketing it very well right now. I mean, obviously we're helping here by talking about it on GameFace, and obviously we publish a playview for it. But this game's flying under the radar, and maybe at E3 this year it kind of comes out from under the covers.
I feel like that's the last time I heard about it was E3.
They don't release hardly anything for it. Like there's like one official trailer that they put out for it. I think Sam's rolling it right now, but look, you know, in the playview we talk about some of the failures from asymmetrical multiplayer games like Evolve and Friday the 13th. This one definitely feels like something different, and it's not so complicated and convoluted that you're just kind of left wondering what to do like you were with Evolve. And it's a better game than Friday the 13th was. Like, I feel like Friday the 13th kind of is carried on its novelty. The fact that it has that IP or that license tied to it is why a lot of people play it. This is the best of the bunch of the asymmetrical multiplayer games, and I'm only playing the closed alpha. So I can't imagine when all the features are in there, it's optimized. It does run a little rough at times.
No, it's Crytek.
Yeah. And, you know, they push hardware to the limits, et cetera, et cetera. But I think this really has an opportunity. I wouldn't even be surprised if this does come out this year, if this is one of those games that gets some Dark Horse Game of the Year mentions at the end of the year. So keep an eye on this one, folks. I'm having a blast with it. In fact, I'm going to play more this weekend. My work is done with it at this point. I put up the play view. I've talked about it on GameFace. I don't have to do anything more with it until it comes out, basically, and I want to go back and play it. So I'm having fun. You guys might, and in fact, I think you can go to huntshowdown.com or whatever, and you can still apply to get into the closed alpha, although it seems like they've let a lot of people in because I never have to wait long to get a game, literally like a couple seconds. The loading is really long. That's one thing I'll say. Playing a closed alpha, you expect stuff like that.
Also CryEngine.
Also CryEngine, exactly. It does take a long time once you get a partner to get into a game. I guess I should have mentioned before we move on about leveling up. So as I mentioned earlier, you have the recruits, like the people that you pay for to play with. You can level them up, but there's permadeath. So if you go into a match and they die, and ultimately there's only one winner of every match, or two if you have a team, they're gone. And then you have to buy another one. And if you run out of cash, then they end up giving you these freebies that you can play with, but then you don't get as much XP. So in addition to leveling up the recruits, which the best I ever got to level up to was like level 3 before he died, you also level up your account. And as you reach new levels from the XP that you get from playing, you unlock new weapons that you can purchase. So very simple progression system, but still effective, and a lot of fail-safes in place to keep griefers from sort of gaming the system, so to speak. So I'm loving it. I hope you guys can get in. If you do, let's play. I'm Dinfire on Steam just like I am anywhere else, and I will definitely play with you guys. I'll be on there this weekend. So let's move on. All kinds of little leaks coming out this week. Just like little tidbits here and there. Most of the stuff incredibly reliable. In this case, though, this is actually information that came from official channels at Square Enix. The new Avengers game is going to be a game as a service, essentially.
Mm-hmm. With no further details.
Yeah.
What that means. Interesting. I mean...
They said it'll be a world that you'll be able to love and play in for years to come.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I mean, I wonder if that's like kind of the effort of trying to replace the revenue stream that was Marvel Heroes, which was basically the same idea. You wonder what... You know, because usually I think game as a service sort of conjures up ideas of like a Destiny 2 sort of thing. You wonder how that model can be applied to the Avengers, because it's like, is everyone just going to play Iron Man, or is
they're going to be like 8 million Iron Men running around?
I mean, that's how Marvel Heroes did it. You had a ton of different characters to pick from, and the idea was it was like a multiverse thing, and so like you're just seeing alternate universe versions of each other.
Or do you really create a character, and then just the sort of the quest givers are the NPCs are the Avengers?
See, that is
how would that work?
That would not work. It would be a mistake. Because you know who tried to do that? DC Universe Online. And you know what was not very compelling? DC Universe Online.
There are some people that swear by it, though.
Oh, sure, but it's like, you don't get to be Batman. You just get to kind of be a guy like Batman, and sometimes you talk to Batman. Like, that's not... It
did last a long time. I mean, it's still going, DC Universe
Yeah, it's still going,
Online.
But it's like... I don't think that's not how you hook the mainstream. If you want this to really be a big mainstream hit, like, you got to let people play as the characters they want to play as.
Yeah.
And just, you know, how many Hulks can there be? You know, so I don't know what this means, like, or if it's just going to be like the multiplayer is going to be like some kind of asymmetrical thing, or everybody picks kind of an Overwatch style, like, you know, if it's just like Avengers versus Hydra sort of thing, and like, you know, you're talking about selling loot boxes, or like...
Oh, you know there's going to be loot boxes.
But it's like,
you know that's going to happen.
But it's just like games as a service can mean anything at this point. It could mean a complete free-for-all sort of, you know, like Marvel Heroes style thing. Could mean it could just mean like, oh, we're selling costumes in boxes during multiplayer. It could mean, you know, who knows. It doesn't really tell us anything except Square is doing what everybody else is doing.
Well, it was interesting. Like, I knew before the show that we only had that very short teaser that you guys have already seen for this game. So I started digging around trying to find other Avengers games. and there aren't any.
Not really.
There was one that THQ was working on.
Yeah.
And Sam, go ahead and roll that other footage that we have there for that.
Canceled one that was kind of a.
It's like a first-person.
Yeah, it was almost
open world.
It was almost a Borderlands style thing.
Yeah, it actually looks kind of freaking cool.
Yeah, there's some good ideas in here if you watch some of this killed footage.
But yeah, this was like before THQ filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And way before it ended up kind of being purchased, its properties being purchased by other publishers, and way before Nordic Games changed their name to THQ. This is kind of cool. First-person game, playing as your favorite Avengers. Do you think this is kind of what we're going to be looking at?
Could be. I mean,
You think it'll be a first-person game or a third-person game?
I don't know. I mean, third person seems like a safer bet when you're talking about characters that people like to play as.
When you're talking about paying that kind of money for the IP.
Yeah. But, like, this looks fine, too. I mean, it could be both. Who knows? It's hard to balance both. And, usually one or the other is more playable. But I don't know. Like, we don't know enough about this to really speculate, I would say. It's whatever they're going to make is what they're going to make. And who knows how long it's going to take. And, yeah, you got these little third person, like, little, like, finishing moves you could do in this. I think the only things they had working in this was Iron Man and the Hulk.
Yeah. But I think I like the idea of playing in first person and those cutaways at third person, but
I don't like melee in first person. Usually.
Yeah, it's always awkward. And that's pretty much all the Hulk does. So.
And I'd rather see the character.
Well, I think too, if you're Square Enix and you've paid a king's ransom for this IP, do you make a game where you don't actually see the characters? Like, that's tough. Also, I think I saw a second there, another Hulk.
There was another Hulk and there was a Thor in there.
So I guess their idea was that,
Also, they're fighting the Skrulls, which is interesting.
Yeah. So I think their idea was, absolutely, there will be 5 million Hulks running around.
Which is probably, I mean, there's Captain America. Okay.
Yeah.
I see where they're going. I kind of dig it.
Yeah, I would have totally played this game.
Yeah.
Absolutely would have played it. More than probably a lot of THQ games that I played in the past. I'd be more excited to play it. But, so do you think it can work as a Destiny-style game?
I mean, maybe. Oh, look at the Wolverine Skrull. That's adorable. I mean, anything can work. I mean, who knows? Like, I just don't know what their idea is. Like,
you think we'll see it at E3? Another trailer, probably?
Maybe a full trailer. But, like, gameplay seems unlikely.
Yeah,
like, I don't think we don't know how far.
They are chatting it up though, coming into E3. That's usually a sign that maybe they're going to show something.
I feel like we'll get like a CG trailer or something. Like it's going to be,
Because we got so little. All we saw was just like.
E3's coming on the heels of Infinity War, which is going to be dominating the conversation at the time.
Absolutely,
so. I don't know. I don't really know what you do with any. Marvel video games have always been a little. Meh.
I was wondering what word you're going to come up with there.
like when you think about the great Marvel video games, it's like a couple of Spider-Mans, maybe.
That's it, yeah.
Like, and people say Spider-Man 2, but Spider-Man 2 is terrible. Like the web swinging is great. The game is terrible.
Yeah, it is,
The only Spider-Man game I would really call a really good game is probably Web of Shadows.
Even that, maybe a little bit of a...
It's fine. I mean, it simulates the Spider-Man thing pretty well. It gets everybody in there.
Combat was pretty good in that, too.
Yeah. They had something. If Shaba Games had been allowed to do a couple more iterations, I think they would have had something really good.
Well, obviously, we have Insomniac's game coming up. That will probably end up being the best Marvel game ever.
Yeah, but you're talking about Marvel games.
There was a Wolverine game that was pretty good.
Yeah, Wolverine, the Wolverine Origins game where the movie got delayed a year and Raven basically got to polish the game for another year. That game was great.
It was, yeah.
That was a great God of War kind of style Wolverine game, which was M-rated, and there's a great story behind all that. Where basically originally Wolverine Origins was going to be rated R, and they were going to, and that's why the game was M. And then they decided, Fox pulled back and was like, no, the movie's going to be PG-13. We're going to reshoot some stuff, redo some stuff. Like, oh, the game has to be a T. And they're like, we'd have to re-render all the CGs, which would cost this much. And they're like, okay, the game's an M. You know, you're like, no.
And better for it, actually.
And, it was great. And, well, I don't know, great, but, like, it was fun. And it was Wolverine. Like, you felt like you're playing Wolverine.
Put it to you this way. It was a great Marvel video game.
But, like, beyond...
the bar there is
But, like, beyond that, you're looking, I mean, like, I guess, like, the X-Men Legends, Marvel Ultimate Alliance games are pretty good Diablo-y game. Like, but, like, I feel like DC has been much more successful, at the very least, translating Batman.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing in the Marvel canon that matches up to the Arkham Asylum and City.
You're right.
I don't know why, and it's also funny because like for years Batman was a tough nut to crack too. If you really want to torture yourself, go play Batman Dark Tomorrow.
Go play the Batman game on GameCube.
That is it. That's it.
That's so bad. Chemco, I think, was the publisher.
Chemco made that. Yeah.
That game was highly anticipated too, man. Like when the GameCube was first shown off, the screenshots from that game were always on like the magazine covers. Mm-hmm. It was always one of the lead images on features for the GameCube.
And he looked like, that was the other thing about that was like, because I remember going to an event for that in San Francisco. It was a big, like all the top people, all the top game journalists were there. It was the first time I met like a whole bunch of guys with names I recognized. It was early on in my time at Tech TV, and I remember I was one of the only people that played the game at the event.
Oh, I played it. It was so bad.
Everyone, because they had it there to play, and I was like, I'll play. Everyone else is just drinking the free drinks, and I was like, I'll play. And like all the developers were around me, like, what do you think? What do you think? And I'm like, it doesn't work. I can't grapple anything.
At that point, it had already been delayed like 4 times.
But it was like it was also like it was one of the first Batman games in a long time where Batman looked like Batman, and not
the character model was the only good part of the game,
and not the animated series. Because for a long time, the animated series, it was what was it, Dark Vengeance or something like that, or Batman Vengeance or something like that. It was another GameCube game that's based on the animated series, which actually came out and was actually pretty good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
But Dark Tomorrow, I mean, I think that was only on the GameCube, wasn't it?
That was like the next Superman 64.
Yeah.
Ironically, also a Nintendo exclusive.
Yeah, and I just remember everyone going, Chemco?
How did they get the license? Yeah, isn't that crazy? They'd never be able to get it now.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So,
Marvel versus Capcom. Like, it's like Marvel's had good games, but like they've been games that were like inserting the Marvel characters into fighting games is like different than like making a Arkham Asylum that captures the character. You know what I mean? And Marvel's never really managed to do that outside of Spider-Man, arguably.
Yep.
So, I mean, if the Crystal Dynamics, I think, can pull it off. They have the talent to pull it off, but I have no idea what they're planning to do. Like, I just don't have any theories.
Certainly, there's an opportunity there to have a really good Marvel.
Yeah, and of course the question comes up: like, do you have Robert Downey Jr.? Do you have the actors from the movies?
Probably not.
Like, well, who knows what contracts they sign?
Yeah.
They might be obligated to do something like that.
That's true.
Or you're going to have somebody trying to sound like Robert Downey Jr., which can, like, you don't like to say it, but it's like, yeah, it kind of makes it feel cheap if you got some sound-alike guy. But who knows? Like, whereas, like, Chris Pratt would probably just do it.
Oh, yeah, because he's just like whatever.
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. Not necessarily though.
Downey Jr. I mean, who knows?
He's an enigma in a lot of ways.
Well, Downey Jr. will show up if you pay him.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Or if you like,
if you pay him well,
or if you like agree to donate to his charity or something. The dude, he does stuff, but like, you gotta make it worth his time, and we'll see what happens.
Hopefully this game is ultimately worth all our time. Yeah, it's a big bet for Square Enix,
and it's taken a lot of time.
It is,
that's for sure.
Yeah, all we've got is that little teaser at this point. So hopefully at E3 we'll get more. Next up, we're going to talk about something. Actually, I don't know if we're going to talk about something. I just want to toot my own horn on this one, Matt, because I don't know if you remember or not, but late last year I mentioned that I had talked to someone in the know and that Metroid Prime 4 was being developed by Bandai Namco. And I said, take it with salt because I don't know for sure, but the source that I heard it from, I trusted a lot. And lo and behold, this morning, things were leaking out earlier in the week, but then this morning it was actually verified that, in fact, Metroid Prime 4 is being developed by Bandai Namco Singapore. How do you feel about that?
I don't know what else they've done, so...
What did they do? That's a good question, actually. I don't either. Or maybe that's the point.
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't know what they've done before. But how do you just feel about Metroid Prime 4 not being developed in-house?
Well, it never has been.
Well, I mean...
Retro's not in-house.
It is. I mean, they're owned by Nintendo.
They're owned by Nintendo, but they're a different group. I mean, looks like they worked on Ace Combat and Ridge Racer. All right.
Also, Ridge Racer 8 allegedly is a Switch exclusive, which will probably be announced at E3.
Ridge Racer.
But, I mean, look, to most people, retro is Nintendo. It's owned by Nintendo. It's considered a first party.
I don't think of them as Nintendo. I think of them as their own thing. They have a different flavor than Nintendo in general. I know they're owned by them, but like a retro game is different. You know?
Well, let me put it to you this way. Metroid Prime is a first party Nintendo game. This will not be a first party Nintendo game. This will be second party, I guess, only because of the IP they're giving them from Nintendo.
Well, I'm sure that's super, but again, not a huge track record with the Bandai Namco partnership, I would say. Their Star Fox game did not turn out well.
Yeah, we actually have some footage of Star Fox Assault queued up on the Tricaster we can take a look at. But Bandai Namco has had partnerships with Nintendo for a while. It did Pokken Tournament was done by Bandai Namco. Smash Brothers was done by Bandai Namco. Yep.
Not wholly.
They worked on the development, and I think it created the 3DS version, didn't it? Completely.
I don't know.
So this relationship that Nintendo has had with,
I mean, clearly there's a strong working relationship.
Well, then there was the Pac-Man Versus stuff back on the GameCube. For whatever reason, Nintendo just loves it. Some Bandai Namco.
Bandai Namco on Smash Brothers.
They did work on Smash Brothers.
What did they do? Like
I can't remember.
I saw the credit, but I figured it was just because Pac-Man's in it.
No, they had some help on development. And I think they had a bigger hand in the 3DS version of it. And of course, they completely created from scratch Pokken Tournament. So this relationship has been a thing for a while. But you're absolutely right. This game that we're looking at right now, Star Fox Assault, was an assault on my senses and my appreciation for Star Fox. It was terrible. There was like all these on-foot running sections where you had like a rocket launcher strapped onto your shoulder.
I don't know why like people keep making the error that like that anybody would want to get out of the R-wing in these games. Just give me a space shooter. Like, what is wrong with you people?
I don't think the approach is wrong with maybe something like what Rare did with Star Fox.
Sort of, but at the same time, it's like
But even Rare tried to shoehorn in some shooting segments into that game.
Yeah, but Star Fox is flying around shooting stuff in a spaceship. Like it'd be like if you made me have to run a marathon in F-Zero. Like, that's not what we're here for, you know? And I know there's a strong character-driven element to Star Fox, but there's also characters in F-Zero, but you don't make me get out of the car. Of course, you don't make F-Zero games anymore. So
well, F-Zero GX, though, there was a huge story component to that. But you weren't actually, like, out walking around like a world. Or I
didn't have to walk around and talk to people or, like, jump over platforms or anything like that. Like,
one thing I will say, though, is if you watch this footage, it is the most cinematic Star Fox game ever.
Yeah.
More cinematic than the Switch Star Fox game, which was god-awful.
Switch? Wii U?
Oh, yeah, Wii U, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, that was... Well, the Star Fox Zero was more sunk to me by the gimmick. Just give me a game to play. And that's the thing about, Metroid Prime, of course. Is like, if you just make a solid Metroid game that uses the controller and doesn't waste my time, like, I'm pretty much okay. But I feel like it's going to be full of Joy-Con crap.
Probably.
That's my concern, because I want to be able to play it with a Pro Controller. I don't want to use the Joy-Con stuff.
I loved playing Metroid Prime 3 with motion controls.
I
thought it was amazing. And look, I was not a hater on the kind of lock-on controls that they had on GameCube, but I loved being able to aim with a pointer. I just thought it was way more accurate and way more fun. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure they'll have both.
Metroid Prime 3 is the only one I never finished because I hate motion controls for that stuff. I'd rather use a controller and press a button. Like, that's not what I'm not here to wave my hands around.
You didn't have to do that with Metroid, though. Although I liked that part of it too. I liked how you could throw. You had like this ability to like reach out and pull shields off.
The grapple thing and all this. I
thought that was so satisfying.
I don't like that. I just press also because like there's you never know. Sometimes it would just screw up. Like the thing wouldn't track it right. And it's like, what always tracks right? My goddamn analog stick. Like, I don't need this immersion. Just give me a button to press.
I hear you, but they're gonna give you the button to press. But I hope that for people like me,
I don't know. I don't know if they will, because like Mario Odyssey, like you still have to rattle the controller around to do a couple of those moves. There's no way to do, and they got more than enough buttons to use for it. So like, that's my only concern about Metroid Prime 4 is really like it's going to be a Joy-Con motion control fest that I don't want to play.
Well, my concern about Metroid Prime 4 is that it's not being made by Retro. Like, Retro had the secret sauce to making this franchise awesome. Like, I don't know that you can just say, okay, go play all the Prime games, Bandai Namco, and now you know how to make a good Metroid Prime game. I don't believe that at all. Like, it could end up being like a really campy, cheesy, corny game.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly...
It could be Other M all over again.
I mean, honestly, a lot of Japanese games are that way.
Yeah.
And so it makes me very nervous to know that this game is being developed in the East, first of all.
Didn't we kind of know that, though? Like... You know, they sort of hinted that it's a new team or whatever. But
Retro had already gone on record saying that they weren't creating
not them for sure.
Right.
And like if it's not Retro, it's probably a Japanese team, right?
I guess.
Well, that's not Japanese; it's a Singapore team.
Right. Yeah, but it's an Eastern team, and so if I do assume that, I still assume it's being developed in house at EAD or Nintendo, their Tokyo studio or whatever.
Yeah, but that doesn't preclude it from having been cheesy.
That's true. So I am extremely nervous about Metroid Prime 4. While I'm gloating a little bit that I actually had the tip on this.
I'd be extremely nervous about Metroid Prime if it was Retro. Like
really,
it's been a long time. People that made those games great, are probably not entirely there anymore. Like
I don't know. Most of that team has stayed intact.
I don't know.
And Retro, even though they've made games that I didn't care for all that much over the last couple years, their games are still really good. And if you like side-scrolling platformers, the Donkey Kong Country games are about as good as it gets right now. So there's still a lot of talent there.
Yeah, but returning to any venerable series after a long time, in the can is it's you wonder is there anything still there? Can you nail it again? It's been a long time. Do you feel the need to update it and make it more modern or whatever? And it's like sometimes that can be a help and sometimes that can be a hindrance. Like, there's a lot of X factors in bringing Metroid Prime back, and in this world of.
So why toss an even bigger X factor in there? Give it to a studio who's completely unproven and has never made games in the genre before.
I mean, the actual answer is because nobody gives a shit about Metroid.
I mean, it doesn't sell particularly well.
No, and Nintendo certainly doesn't give a shit about Metroid, and they have Retro making their moderately lucrative Donkey Kong games that they know how to make and they don't have to worry about, and they'll just do this, and they got who knows? I mean, who knows how recently they even decided to do this game? Maybe it was like, oh, those guys can do something like that. Oh, you guys do it. You guys do it and get it done, and we can tell the fans that we got a Metroid game out. We squeezed a Metroid game onto the Switch.
I think what concerns me the most is that there are no other games like Metroid Prime, games that are kind of equal mix of action and exploration. That exploration side of it, that feeling of isolation you get playing Prime games, that is something that's like
Metroid. I mean, that's Metroid.
Yeah, you're right. But converting that into 3D,
right.
You have to walk a balance of action and isolation. And Retro, to me, just had that quotient nailed. And it also made sure that the parts where you're just walking around, investigating, scanning, weren't boring. And they were paced in such a way that you never had to wait too long to get to an action sequence to where it started to wear out their welcome. So,
well, you kind of hope that Retro's maybe consulting to some degree.
Also, the ballparks in Retro's games are awesome. Like the puzzles that they work out.
These are all things you can just emulate. These are all things you can see and you understand how it works, and Namco can just do it.
We'll see.
The question becomes like, what are they going to quote unquote innovate? What are they going to quote unquote improve? And that's where my concern lies. Not just for that, but it would be there for Retro as well, because Retro is very good at what they do, but Nintendo's still the one calling the shots. And if they decide they want to have tons of 3D rumble motion control crap, like that's going to.
Oh, I definitely think that's
going to sink the game.
I think it's definitely going to happen. They'll
be there.
It's going to use all the functionality of the Joy-Cons. I guarantee it.
Well, my just request is let me play it with a real controller.
Fair enough.
I
think you'll be able to
put all the waggly crap in there you want, but as long as it can translate to an actual button and an analog stick, I'm fine. Mario Odyssey did it well enough. If you just make me wiggle the controller once, shake it to do a thing once in a while, okay, fine, we got to do that. But I just want a frickin' video game. I don't want an experience. I don't want a theme park ride. I don't want a Samus simulator. I want to play Metroid.
Save that for stuff like Nintendo Labo.
Right. You want me to build Samus a ship out of cardboard? We'll talk about it. I might do that. That's cool.
That would be cool. And I would not be surprised, actually, if Nintendo Labo stuff ends up getting licensed things that are Metroid, where you can build like a Metroid ship, or you can build like
I'll be able to look like Papercraft Labo Metroid or a Samus or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's that's some cool stuff. I mean, more interesting to me than a piano.
Yeah, for sure, it makes sense.
I did love that story about the German ratings board. They almost threw it out because they thought
they thought it was trash
garbage before it could get rated. That's very funny.
It was kind of a wake-up call for Nintendo, I'm guessing. It probably scared the crap out of Nintendo before they announced it. They're like, oh my god, no. How's the public going to receive this? The public's received it very well, though. So, all right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about EVO 2018.
EVO World.
Yeah.
I think they're calling it EVO World or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know why they would do that.
Well, because EVO Japan just happened, so now
Right.
they have to differentiate the Vegas one somehow. So
I mean, they did differentiate it by calling the other one EVO Japan.
Yeah, but EVO Vegas has to be like bigger.
Right.
EVO World, I think, is what they're going with so far. I don't know if that's finalized, but I heard them call it that a couple times during the Japan tournament.
Yeah, so they announced the games that are going to be there. Dragon Ball Fighters is going to be there. But there's one game that is not going to be there, Matt.
Well, I think Dragon Ball Fighters took this place.
So Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite snubbed. Not going to be at EVO. That's a big deal. There was all kinds of consternation leading up to the announcement. People didn't know whether it was going to be in or not.
Well, the game's dead. I think this pretty much confirms it. That's the end of it. Because the thing is, like, look, if Capcom wanted it to be an EVO, it would be an EVO. Like, because Capcom just say, like, you put Marvel in or you don't get Street Fighter. You know, because they're sponsoring it. They're putting the money up, you know. But clearly they're cutting their losses on this thing. And I think my girlfriend actually had a good point when that got announced, where she said, you know, because they did that battle for the gems thing with it, where the winner, it was a Capcom sponsored tournament. Had a bunch of different tournaments, and like for the big final thing, the winner got like the Infinity Gauntlet with the gems or the box of gems or something. She said at the end of that, they didn't announce any DLC, and like that's super traditional. You do a big tournament, you announce your next balance patch or your DLC or something like that.
Always worked, yeah.
And like they had nothing at the end of that, and it's like, oh, well, that's basically that's bad. Like that's like kind of your death knell sign number one, and so like my position on this being an EVO was always like, if they want it to be an EVO, it will be an EVO. And to me, this says Capcom they're cutting it loose. They're saying this is, and who knows what that means? Maybe they start over and do Marvel vs. Capcom 4 and try again, do it right this time, make it look like Dragon Ball. Because you know what? You make a Marvel vs. Capcom game that looks like Dragon Ball Fighters.
Yeah, it'll do very well.
Yeah,
and it played exactly like Dragon Ball Fighters.
Because look, I know they wanted to reuse Marvel 3 assets, but it's like, Dragon Ball just ate your lunch, dude. Like this game's been out for a couple months, and it's going to be an EVO. And you also got Guilty Gear.
Not even a couple months.
You got
like a month.
Guilty Gear X. Well, it'll be a few months by the time EVO happens. But like Guilty Gear Xrd or whatever that is, that does the same thing. Use 3D models to look like a 2D animated thing.
Yep.
Like just take Marvel vs. Capcom.
No one's gonna hate.
Make it look like that.
All they want is a good fighting game.
Yeah.
That represents the characters well. That's it.
And they are at a disadvantage in some part because of Marvel's rules on the license. It couldn't use the X-Men, couldn't use Doctor Doom.
There's still plenty of characters though.
Yeah, but they weren't. Marvel without Doom and the X and Wolverine and Storm and Magneto is a.
Those are iconic.
I get that that's a hype killer. It doesn't bother me too much because we've seen them so much. But it's like, if you love that game, like those are iconic characters in those games. For sure. It'd be like not having Ryu or Strider. No, I guess they didn't have Strider in the MVC3 at first, but they brought him in later. Yep. But now that Disney's buying Fox Pictures, the Fox, like that all is going to get worked out. So if you started to work on another Marvel versus Capcom, you could probably include the Fantastic Four stuff and the X-Men stuff. You'd really just not, and you still have Spider-Man.
Do you think this will kill the franchise though?
I think it'll kill it for a while. Like Capcom doesn't have, Marvel's very sketchy when it comes to these game things. Who knows, how that license works, who's calling those shots, whether they think it's worth trying again. Like, I mean, Marvel vs. Capcom is venerable, classic gaming series, but it's like it depends very much on whether Marvel wants to do that with the license, whether Capcom wants to spend the budget, whether Marvel wants to give them the budget. Like, I don't know the politics behind all this.
We start thinking about maybe if the deal has some kind of sales-based incentives, where if Marvel was making most of its money based on sales.
Well, look, clearly they
didn't want to do it again.
Clearly, they'd intended to have this be like a Street Fighter style season-based thing, you know, and it looks to me like they're killing that idea.
They're bailing on it.
They haven't said anything about it in forever.
Well, it sold terribly.
Yeah, and like to me that says like, hey, it doesn't mean that there's no appetite for this kind of game. It means you got to do it right.
Yeah,
and this, I think it's pretty clear. Once you get your hands on this thing, it feels like a pretty cheap follow-up, and like, I don't think it's a coincidence they didn't call it 4.
Street Fighter V was kind of like that, though, too.
A little bit.
When it launched, I mean, it was bare bones, man. I mean, I think that hurt the game big time. And then Capcom doesn't really learn from it for...
Well, I think Capcom has learned from it if you look at how they've treated Arcade Edition for Street Fighter V.
Right,
but that was too late for this.
But
obviously.
Think about how long that came out after.
Yeah, 2 years.
I mean, you can't wait that long to get a game to the place where it should be at launch. You just can't.
But they've got, I mean, I think Monster Hunter World was a solid launch. And like
solid launch. Fastest selling Capcom game ever. And that is saying something, man.
So maybe they've learned something, they've turned it around somehow. I don't know who was at fault there. I don't know what, we'll never know the internal politics or logic of how Capcom got Street Fighter V out in the condition it was in, and now they've sort of turned it around to some degree.
Yeah.
Although Abigail got to get nerfed. Not just, I mean, what a boring character. Anyway,
I think a lot of the characters in Street Fighter V aren't
really
going to be around for the long haul.
The community is divided right now on the Abigail thing, but like it's just like there's all these videos of like somebody working super hard to get Abigail down, and like Abigail's got that much life left, and then the person makes one mistake, and Abigail does some like 2 combos and a mix-up that wipes the whole life bar out, and you're like, okay, that's great. Yeah. And it's like you work that hard, and then they
a lot of people in tournaments play with Abigail.
Yeah, well, there were a couple Abigails in the finals on Evo Japan, but they got knocked out.
Yeah,
it's not impossible, but it's a real. They got to look at that again.
Yeah.
But Marvel, like, once you get your hands on that game, I think it was very obvious that it was a very quick and dirty production. I don't know where the blame lies on that. Whether Marvel wasn't going in fully, or whether they didn't want something that was quality the way Marvel 3 had been or Marvel 2 had been. But like, and the roster's very small because it takes a lot of I think we only got 6 new characters total, and then you had the Black Panther and Monster Hunter, which had been clearly hacked out of the main game to be sold as DLC because they're in the campaign.
Yeah,
it's like so your model was finishing up to put them in the cutscenes, but you didn't have the character done.
They got to milk those 300,000 people for all they're worth.
Yeah, and it's like. There's a good Marvel versus Capcom 4 in here somewhere. Like, the mechanics aren't terrible, but like, you got to put the effort in. You got to make it a complete package. And I still say, you got to make it look like Dragon Ball.
I just don't think it looks right.
It doesn't look right.
I think that's the problem.
I mean, Chun-Li's face in that E3 trailer probably did more damage.
It destroyed it. Yeah.
Any of that PR, any good PR could have won them.
And honestly, I don't think most of the characters look as they should.
No, it's. I mean, I thought they looked fine in 3, but like for some they did, the art style here just doesn't work. I mean, I don't like the weird armored Captain America thing. Like, I feel like that you needed to have them be a little more their iconic selves. The Capcom characters don't really mesh in the art style very well. Like, it's homogenous. It's like even in 3, like, Zero didn't look quite the same as everybody kind of kept their art proportions a little bit. You had a game where you felt you could put Tron Bonne and her mech and the Reserve bots in, and I don't feel like that would fit in this. And that's a weakness in my opinion. Like, I just feel like
it's too late now.
It feels a little made.
I think it's game over for this game.
Oh yeah,
it's too late to bring it back.
Infinite's totally done. I think if you made like a triumphant, like full-fledged comeback with Marvel vs. Capcom 4. We redid everything. It looks like Dragon Ball Fighters and Guilty Gear Xrd, and it's a beautiful 2D looking kind of thing. It does justice to the comic art of the characters. It's got a full roster. The X-Men are back. Doctor Doom's back. No one cares about the Fantastic Four. But you get like you get those characters people want back in. You get an art style that really pops. You get a roster that, you're not going to get a roster that rivals Marvel vs. Capcom 2 because that was every 2D character they'd made.
It's a lot easier to get licenses.
Well, it wasn't a license. It was just like a lot of the sprites were made already, and they were able to just bring them in from other fighting games and the previous Versus games. But you gotta go all out. You gotta, the fighting game world is more crowded now, and people are going to decide,
Is it more crowded now?
Yeah, there's stuff. I mean, the idea that Dragon.
It seems like there are less fighting games now.
No, not
than
at
there
all.
used to be.
No,
really?
No.
We used to get all these like really cheap, like
in terms
Japanese fighters.
Oh yeah, but I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the scene. I'm talking about the thing that makes fighters successful. The thing that gives them legs in life is like it used to basically be there's Street Fighter 4. And like whatever else people are paying to put in the tournament, like maybe Tekken gets in there, maybe a Blaze Blue here and there. Virtua Fighter was never anything.
Virtua Fighter 4, I thought was part of the competitive scene.
I mean, in the sense that like 90 people would sign up for a tournament. Like it's not. It was never a big deal.
Was it an Evo though?
It appears it was never. I don't think it was ever a main event Evo game. Yeah. I mean, there's always side tournaments of any. I mean, there's going to be a big side tournament of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite at Evo, but it's not going to be one of the 8 games that is the main.
Right, it's a part of the official show.
Just like there's going to be a Dissidia tournament there. I mean, anything that's fighting games is going to be there.
Well, yeah, because fans will just get together and play. But
or you'll have like the companies are going to sponsor a little thing, but they are. When
I say is it at Evo, I mean
they're not
is it
main
a part
stage.
Of,
the 8 main stage games.
Yeah.
It is not one of those.
Yeah.
But the idea that there are 8 fighting games that are people worth playing at that level, and for that kind of prestige, like that's a big deal. That was not always the case. There was a time when it was more like 5.
I think it's only at Evo though.
Sort of, but there's still a living scene. There's still a living, it's the fighting game community is larger and it can support more of these games, and people are more willing to give these games a chance. Like there was a time when people were like, no, I don't want to, but the idea that like a licensed anime Dragon Ball game is actually good enough to be, I mean that's a testament to how Bandai Namco went out and they went all out and they made something that like, we got to make it good, we got to make it look good, we got to make it play good, we got to reach the fandom, but we also got to make it a fighting game that people find depth in and find worth playing and really want to dedicate themselves to. And they did it.
They found the right partner. They found Arc System Works.
Right.
Yeah.
So we know Capcom can make a game like that because Marvel 2 is still probably more popular than Marvel 3 and Infinite combined.
Yeah.
So you just got to go back and go back to the basics, go back to the roots, and do something like what Namco did with Arc System Works. Make a Marvel game that we all get excited about again. You can bring that Marvel. The community is ready to be ready to be hyped about Marvel again. But like, there's nothing to be hyped about in Infinite. Yeah, like you got to give us the game. Yeah. You got to give us the game we want to be hyped about.
Yep. All right, let's move on to our last topic of the week. This is our advantage of being on a Friday. I see it every week. Like, and I'll see you next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all the other podcasts. We'll talk about all the stuff that we just talked about here today on Friday, plus one, and that is Kingdom Come Deliverance. This game flying way under the radar.
Yeah.
Some people calling it the next Witcher. I've heard bandied about.
Yeah, well, people say a lot of things.
It does have a similar...
Well, it's an Eastern European sword play game. I mean, I don't totally... I kind of see what someone's after when they say that, but no, it's not on the level of the Witcher.
You've been playing. You played it last night.
I played like 5 hours last night.
It comes out on Tuesday, is that right?
It's so it is not The Witcher. However, I will say, it's being touted, it's kind of like an open world, sort of like a realistic medieval world where you can run around and do kind of medieval things and whatever. It's a lot more narrative heavy than you maybe think it is, because this is written and directed by the guy who did Mafia 1 and 2, which had a similar thing, at least so far. I think I've finally hit the point where the game is letting me sort of like run around and explore the world more. But the first 4 or so hours were very linear narrative focused. In much the same way as like kind of the first 2 Mafia games where you're like, oh, I'm getting this open world, like kind of like Mafia classic old-timey city simulator. No, you're driving around just getting the story scene to story scene to story scene, and there's a little bit of that to the beginning of this game.
It was funny because I kind of feared that this game would not be cinematic at all.
No, it's very cinematic.
I thought it might have like 3 cutscenes in the whole game.
No, it's very cinematic. It's a very strong story to it, very strong character. I mean, for instance, like that's your character. Like you don't create it's in Skyrim. You don't
It's
create a
just one
character.
guy.
You play a guy
That's him.
you play the son of a blacksmith, and your name is Henry, and done. Like that. You
No
are
character
a very. I mean, in the same way as Witcher, you are a specific character in a specific situation, going through a specific story. Like that is what this is. I mean, you have a lot of apparently. I mean, once at a certain point, you have the freedom to kind of choose what you want to do and how you want to do it. And there's a lot of dialogue choices, and there's a lot of like you have to. There's perks that can shift you one way or the other in terms of how you deal with things.
You're kind of showing some of that stuff now.
And let's not also like don't forget. There is an achievement for finishing the game without killing anyone. There's an achievement.
Do you think that's even possible?
Absolutely possible.
Yeah.
I haven't killed anyone yet.
Oh.
Because you'll see in like the fights, like people can take like 3 or 4 good hits with a sword at most, and then they'll back off and be like, "Don't kill me, don't kill me."
Yeah, we saw that just a second
Yeah,
ago.
and you can decide to kill them, or you can let them go, or you can let them go and make them leave all their stuff behind, which is what I do.
Is there a way to kill them before that ever?
Oh yeah, you
that option
can just
pops
go up and hit them. I mean, you don't have to talk to them.
Oh,
You could probably just kill them. So the way it's set, so I guess I'll set up the story a little bit where so you're this kid named Henry. Not kid. I mean, you look about 34, but like he's. I think he's.
That's a kid to me.
He's supposed to be, probably late teens, and he. You're the son of a blacksmith, and you're kind of your parents think you're lazy, and like you're out drinking last night with your roustabout towny mates, and like and stuff like. But like they wake you up and you have to like go run some errands for your dad, and you go into town. You kind of town being like a little village, and you have to. So it's interesting because like you really have to. I don't know how much of this I'm doing right because it holds your hand in the sense that it teaches you the game systems, but it doesn't hold your hand in the sense of like here's where you need to go to do this thing or find this thing or do that thing.
No waypoints?
There are waypoints, but like how you sort of approach. So like the first thing you're given, the first quest you're given, is all this errand. So you have to get a sack of charcoal at the local petrol station. You got to get a sack of charcoal. You have to collect money from this guy that owes your dad money for like tools he made him. You have to get your dad a beer at the local tavern.
Like any good
son. And you have to do that last so it stays cold or cool, which is weird because beer was not served cold in medieval times.
You're right. Absolutely, you're right.
But apparently he has certain tastes. And then you have to you have to take a sword play lesson with this like guy who's teaching you how to play with sword fight, which your parents don't like because your blacksmith dad is like, you don't need to use a sword, and like there's the whole thing where like your dad is clearly like better than he should be in a little town like this, and like famous nobles come from all over to get swords made by him, and you're like, okay, who is your dad?
Right, who is this guy?
And and the last one is that might be everything. There's one other thing you have to do. I can't remember what it is, but like, so basically but the thing is you have no money, so you can't buy the charcoal. So you go to the guy to get the money to get the money for the tool so you can buy the stuff. And he doesn't want to give, at least in my game, he didn't want to give me the money. And I was like, well, you got to give, I tried the noble response where I was like, you have to pay some of it. And he's like, no. And so I got in a fist fight with him and I beat the hell out of him. And then he said, just take whatever you want. And so I took all his shit. And I took everything of value in his house. He gave me the key to his house. I took everything of value in his house and I went into the trader to sell it. And I was just barely able to haggle out enough value from what I got from that guy's house to buy the sack of charcoal.
After you cleaned him out.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like, so money is not that easy to come by, and haggling for it is a real process. You have to have charisma and speech abilities and stuff. And you can see how they compare to the merchant guy and how much the merchant likes you and all that kind of thing. And then you have to go buy the ale, and then like the ale actually doesn't cost hardly anything. So like one. I can't remember the name
coin.
of it. It's one coin. It's whatever. It begins with a G. It's like some medieval Czech Bohemia area coin type, which apparently the codex in this game is massive. Like you learn about different. So like you can go in and like learn about character, but there's a whole just like the world, what the medieval world was like. So you can read everything about every element of the game you encounter, every kind of like anything about tanneries and anything about how the money works. So there's a thing in the money work about how it broke down to like. They didn't use base 10, so it like broke down in like 7 of these and 12 of these and like 10 of these. And they're like, that's really confusing. So we just broke most of the coins breakdown in this game is tenths. So like 0.1. So like the beer costs like 0.1 coin. So you've got like it kind of gets down to the nitty gritty on that, and so you have to kind of figure out how. And is there another way to earn coin or a better way to do that? I have no idea. There's nothing. There's a later on. So that you go back and you get that stuff and you bring the stuff back to your dad and you fix the. Oh, you had to pick up the cross guard from the sword from the castle because they had that made somewhere else and that got sent over. So you got that and you put the sword together with your dad and you kind of talk about stuff. And it's very well voice acted. Like the acting's very good. The cinematography of everything is good. There are interesting scenes between characters that have interesting things to say to each other. Like I dug it. It held my attention, which is more than I can say for a lot of these, like, because you see where things are going, but you actually are interested in who these people are, and like the noble that you're making the sword for shows up, and they try it out, and he kind of like they're very good at they're very good at kind of demonstrating sort of the social stratification where like the nobles clearly treat the peasants differently, but the nobles are treating your dad differently than they're treating everyone. And like you can kind of see how everybody reacts with each other. The caste system is really the class system's in play. There's a whole like the perks in the game reflect that as you upgrade the character. So like you can upgrade your character with a perk that basically makes you more attractive and more likely to have good speech results with noble characters, but it means you can't take the thing that makes you better at talking to peasants. So like you kind of there's a balance there.
It sounds like this is what kind of borders on a sim.
There's a lot of sim elements to it in the sim. So like you get hungry, you get tired, you have to sleep. How long you sleep matters. The comfort of the bed you sleep in matters. How much you eat matters. What you eat matters. It lowers your energy if you eat heavy foods. So if you eat like lighter foods, you like have more. So you've got like a life bar, right? And you've got your stamina bar. And as if you get more tired or more injured, your life bar will go down, and then like your stamina bar matches your life bar for the most part. But then you can like injure if you step off the wrong ledge and fall too far, you can hurt your foot.
Oh, geez.
And that will like lower your stamina there too.
Wow. Is it too much?
Not really.
I mean, look, I realize some people love stuff like this. I personally don't.
It's not real. And like, I mean, everything. I mean, your clothing has condition. So like, it took me a while to figure out kind of how the combat fully works. So I got beat the hell out of at first in that fist fight, and I was all covered in blood, and I had like torn things, and people reacting to me. But I finally figured out you can go wash your face off and stuff. Wash the blood off you in like a trough of water or something, and your speech and charisma go back up. Because like people don't want to talk to a guy who's covered in blood,
right?
And like so you do all this stuff, and you come back to your dad, and you make the sword, and everybody types the sword, and then suddenly an army attacks.
Oh, geez.
So the situation is set in I think it's Charles IV, the Emperor Charles IV of the Holy Roman Empire was a really strong leader, and he died, and his son Wenceslas took over, and Wenceslas was not so strong, and was more interested in sort of just partying. He didn't care about being a solid leader. And there's some uprisings against him, and he asked his half-brother, the King of Hungary, to help him, and the King of Hungary's response, whose name begins with an S, whose name I can't remember his name because it's a weird Hungarian name, his response was to start kind of invading. And so his army appears up on the ridge, and just go, all these banners, and they blow a horn, and they just come on down and destroy your village, and everybody, it's the classic JRPG thing where everybody dies but you, and people get in the castle, but the castle closes up, and they're like, run to the next town and tell them shit's going down, so you have to ride out and steal a horse and ride out. And that was actually the closest I got to being annoyed with the game, because you have stamina and the horse has stamina, and I got shot with an arrow. As a part of a cutscene, you get shot with an arrow, so you're bleeding, so you're constantly losing. And every time you stop to get the horse regain stamina, arrows just. I made it to like, and it's a long ride. It was like felt like a 4 or 5 minute ride all the way to this other town, and I got to the part where the cutscene kicks in, and I had like a sliver of health. I mean, I was dead. I was if it was like 10 feet further out, I would have died. And like that would probably have been the point. I was like, I'm done with this game,
right?
Because it just felt like it wasn't my fault. I mean, I realized a lot of people die in medieval times. It wasn't their fault. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
But it's like, it didn't feel fun to kind of like...
Or fair.
Be fighting this stamina thing the whole way. And I'm like, well, I haven't had time to upgrade it. I don't think clearly I didn't have time to upgrade the horse's stamina because I just found the horse.
They intentionally put you in this precarious
you're in a
situation.
very dark situation. And then like you have to recover and like there's a whole thing where you have to sneak out. And so there's the action of the game basically starts where like you tell them what's happening. And they're like, oh, I guess shit's going down. And like, there's a point at which like you want to sneak back to get back to your village to bury people because you don't want to just leave them out in the sun, right? And so, but the king or the lord of the castle here won't let you out because you've been hurt and it's too dangerous and you're a stupid kid and what are you gonna? So you have to get out of the castle and the guard won't let you through. And I assume there's ways to get out. I mean, I think I could probably have just like snuck out like through like off the drawbridge or something. But I wanted to use the horse because it was a long ride, right? So I had to get out through the gate. And they talk to the guard, and the guard's like, well, I can't just let you out. It's like, I mean, maybe if you come with a good reason, I should let you out. And you're like, what the hell does that mean? And he's like, oh, I mean, if someone's dressed as a soldier, I just let them through, right? And like, so you're like, okay, so I got to find it. And like, you're looking through the armory, and so there's a lock, everything's locked. I'm like, well, I got to find a lockpick, and you go around and you find. Okay, so this trader sells lockpicks, but they're like, okay, it costs all this money. I don't have that kind of money. I got to find something to do. So I wandered around until I found a goblet that nobody was looking at, and like for some reason didn't mark as stealing it, so I just took it and I sold that and a bunch of I sold the arrows that were in me. They were worth about $1 each. So I sold a bunch of the arrows that I pulled out of my leg, and I sold this goblet, and I haggled the guy down so I could afford one lockpick. And then here's the thing. So it auto saves pretty regularly when you complete tasks and things in quests. But to manually save, you have to use something called Savior Spirit or something like this. It's a drink, and you can only hold 3, and they're super rare. And every time you drink one, you get a manual save, a hard save.
Oh, jeez.
And so, but I'd done that. I drank one after the whole big. I'm like, I don't want to do the horse ride again. I want to go. So everything's cool. I've healed up. I've slept. I'm in good shape. I'm going to drink the thing, save the game. And then I hit the point where like, okay, I've scraped all this together and done like a haggling thing. I don't know if I could do again to get one lockpick. And of course, what happens every time you try the lockpick mini game in a new video game? Every time you break it instantly because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. So I'm like, so I don't want to. I can't use up another drink to save it because I don't know what. So I'm like, okay, so I'm looking. I guess I'll just try it. And I did make it. Like, the lockpicks in this game are actually more robust than something like Skyrim. It's not like you fail and it breaks.
We saw some footage of one earlier, actually.
Yeah, it's not like you fail and it instantly breaks. It's more like if you do it wrong, like you make noise and people will hear you. So I did get it done, and they had the tabard and enough stuff in there that I could dress up enough. And you walk up and the guy's like, I can't let. Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, let him through. So you go. So it's like, but like nothing. Basically a little like icon led you to the armory. But it didn't tell you which chest it's in. It doesn't tell you how the lock picking works. It doesn't tell you're kind
of
a
lot of hand holding.
Kind of on your own a little bit. And and it's
the game sounds kind of awesome actually for a certain type of player.
It's definitely not like it's not Skyrim in the sense that like it's real involved and it's a moment to moment thing. It's like Skyrim if you put a bunch of survival mods in it, I guess. Right. And like you come. It's interesting because you come up. So you're heading towards the village, and there's corpses everywhere, and you keep running into like you run into a guy who's like digging it. Oh, it's a bandit. So the guy comes up and like he's like, oh, we're gonna fight. I'm gonna take your stuff too. And like I just poked him a few times with a sword, and he's like, don't kill me. And like you can overwhelm people with combos if you swing hard enough and come in at them like unexpected, and like you can aim like there's a little star thing you can see there, so like you can pick which part of the body. So up is the head, and like you can go upper left, upper right, up that lower left, lower right.
Here's the sword play in this is pretty.
Yeah, and so there you see he's given up, and you could either finish him or you can talk to him and decide what to do with him. And it's just, there's a lot there, man. Like, I feel like, and put it this way, like, so after I'd finally done all that and I gotten back to the village and tried to bury things, another thing happens and another scene happens and you run into more people. And finally, after all that, for like 4 hours, like, it pulls back and it's like, Warhorse Games presents Kingdom. I'm like, oh, that was all the opening. Okay.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot happening. And so then, like, you go back and you're kind of set loose on this other town where you can kind of, like, there was one guy wants you to do some kind of unsavory things to pay him back for taking care of you, and you're like, you can refuse him, or you cannot, because there's a lot of stuff on like honor and reputation, and would you do that as a good Christian is like a very big emphasis. You can use strength to impress people, or you can like if you develop that. So it's like it does work like Skyrim in the sense that the more you use a certain thing, the better it gets. So like the more you talk to people and the more you convince them of things, the higher your speech will go.
Right.
The more you fight with a sword and the more successful hits you land, the higher your strength and the better your sword play gets.
There's a lot of opportunities for this game to fall on its face.
Yes.
I mean,
I don't know
how ambitious this game is.
And some of it's like you can see it right here. Like sometimes, and this is maybe just kind of the Crytek engine in general, sometimes it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Sometimes it looks amazing. And sometimes it looks like that horse's mane.
Yeah.
Sometimes it looks like a PS2 game,
right.
texture-wise. It's very uneven in that regard.
I could see this game, though, at the end of the year having its contingents who are like Game of the Year.
Well, here's the thing.
Provided all this stuff just doesn't melt down and break.
Right. Well,
ultimately.
here's the thing. Like, it does... There's nothing else like it. Right
there
now.
isn't.
Like
no.
I mean, there are games I would compare directly to it, but they're fairly old. It's things like Arx Fatalis or things like there are games like this, but,
in 2018,
but you don't see them. You don't see them on console very often. I'm playing this on Xbox One X, so this is also noteworthy, and it's the first game I've chosen for the Xbox specifically because I figured it would run better than the Pro.
Yep.
And it runs fine as far as I can. I haven't seen it. The load times are long in places, and sometimes
games like this,
sometimes you get a longish load time when you talk to someone.
Oh, really?
Like they load up their inventory. I mean, I don't know. It's not that common, but like there's a couple. And I'm sorry, whenever I hit a button to talk to somebody and I see a load icon, I think of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, and you never want to remind me of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006.
So I think people are wondering though. So obviously, there's lots of Skyrim fans out there, lots of Witcher fans.
Yeah.
Are those types of players going to enjoy this, do you think?
Maybe.
Like, it's really not those games.
No, it's... I will say this. If you play Skyrim and The Witcher and your main problem with it is it feels too simple, that it feels too arcadey and too...
Which most people would never, ever say.
I think some people... I mean,
some, but most wouldn't.
Because look, like Skyrim could use a combat overhaul in the realm of what this game is doing. Because like, look, that's the other thing. Is like, is it a perfect medieval simulator? No, there's a lot of gamey elements to it, but the world feels very authentic. The world feels very homespun. Let's put it that way. They've done a lot of research on what the furniture looked like, what the clothing looked like, what people's reactions would be to things. Like, there's stats in here on like how conspicuous you look. like if you put the wrong clothing on in the wrong town, people will be like, "What the hell's that guy about?" Like it'll damage your ability to interact with people.
The systems underneath the hood in this game, the number crunching, all that's going on. Mm-hmm. Like I said earlier, it does provide a lot of opportunity for failure. But if you get it right,
if you do,
games like this have a tendency to like blow your mind.
Right,
sometimes.
And the thing is, like, I'm not far enough into it to really tell you if it's. I mean, I've played like 5 hours this game, and I feel like I've barely scratched it.
You probably haven't yet.
And
are you going to keep playing?
I'm definitely going to keep playing. The other thing is, like, I am in the middle of the first side quest I've done this far in. Like, I'm doing the first side quest, which is like, and I don't know how it's going to turn out. Like there's a lot of like. It feels like there's a lot of ways to go about things where like either you can appeal to someone's noble nature, you can appeal to you can try to just to convince them speechcraft wise, you can appeal to like, oh, I'm just a regular dude kind of thing. Like there's a lot of ways to approach it. I think it sounds like they've built the game so you can basically talk your way out of almost any situation. It sounds like you almost never need to really fight to the death for anything because you can finish the game.
Well, I think just the idea that you don't just outright kill people.
Right.
That dialogue pops up.
Right. And you can, but I mean, I assume there's going to be some kind of reputation consequences later. And there's like, there's reputation perks you can take. Like a lot of them are Fallout style. They're like, they either have a disadvantage or they counteract on one of the other perks. And like, it's like, you can't take this other perk or like, like there's a thing, I think there was a thing where it's like, Insomniac, where like, you don't get as tired at night, but you have like a 10% drop in stamina during the day. Or there's a local hero perk and like a notorious villain perk or something where it's like you get bonuses to these reputation things because everybody thinks of you as a good dude, but your reputation will drop faster if you do bad things because people have higher expectations of you.
Yeah. See, these games, a lot of... And look, I've seen it with games like Skyrim and The Witcher as well, where you're making all these decisions and all these systems are running under the hood. It always gets either paid off or it completely falls on its face near the end of the game, where all these things that you've done, do they actually amount to anything or not? And that'll be the wild card we'll have to watch for.
Or are there ways to kind of game the system and break it in various ways? I don't know.
And usually there are.
Yeah, so I don't know yet.
This was a small studio, but this is kind of like CD Projekt Red. It's this mid-sized studio that has really, really high ambitions.
And it's also clearly like this is the people who made this game have wanted to make this game for a long time. It's kind of a For Honor sort of thing, where you're like, there's a passion for this idea. Clearly, and there's not a whole lot of stuff like this. The attention to detail and the attention to historical accuracy is on display, both in terms of the world you're playing around in, and also in terms of just read the codex, and it's just pages and pages of backstory and historical background, and why this is the way it is, and why this is how it is, and if how you would think of a pig, like why don't you see any pigs, because they didn't have pink pigs in pens, they just let wild boars run around, and like it's. And you
learn something from this game.
You learn a lot. There's little consequences to things. There's things behave properly. Like, it's just like there's a verisimilitude to it, where like that you go into the town, your village has been destroyed, and it's part of a plot thing, but like you go up and like one of the characters that's dead is in the rubble of a thing, is being guarded by this dog. It's very barking, and eventually it turns out. The dead guy is the butcher, so the dog loves because the butcher used to give the dog meat, so the dog is guarding
basically his meat.
His meat, but also like guarding like this person that he saw as his friend or as his master or whatever. And it's just like that little there's touches like that. There's like that's people cool. When you kill someone or when you find a dead person, like the things they're carrying make sense for who they are. Like you loot dead bodies in your old village. Most of them have like carrots on them, but like the merchants have coins. That amount. That's the level of detail and thought that's happening in that game.
We'll see. It'll be interesting to see when more people start playing this and word starts spreading online.
And make no mistake, there is some Eurojank there. There is some. Some clunkiness.
That's the first question I asked Matt when he told me he was playing it. I'm like, is there Eurojank?
I don't know what the thing is. Where as soon as you cross the Rhine River, no one can put an inventory interface together to save their damn life. I mean, it's not as bad as something like Gothic, but like it's still pretty clunky. But it's functional. If you can get through Skyrim's inventory system, you can get through this thing fine. There's a lot of information on it, is all. It took me a while to figure out what told me how many of a thing there were. Because it's like this whole grid, and finally I figured out, there's a little number, like a pound sign, and like that's how many you have, instead of just saying X2 or X3. You have to look down this other grid and kind of match it up to this thing, which is a little weird, but okay. Basically, I guess I'd say if what I'm describing sounds interesting to you, give it a shot. If what I'm describing sounds like, oh my God, I'd rather put needles in my eyes, probably not for you.
I'm kind of half and half. Like parts of it, I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that.
I don't know what you...
But then some parts, I'm like, oh wow, that sounds really interesting.
I don't know what you'd think of it. I feel like you would think it's...
Oh, I'm going to play it.
Interesting.
I'm going to play it because you said it's unlike anything else out there. That's all I need to hear.
I feel like you're going to think...
I need to play it.
You're going to think it's interesting but annoying.
Okay.
That would be my guess.
We'll see. Next week, we'll talk about it. I'll talk about it next week. And I'll see if I rebut everything he just said.
Also, in terms of the cinematic stuff, the music is awesome.
Really?
This is some of the best music of the year already, and I would be it'll be on my mind at the end of the year.
How did this little studio do this?
I don't know. The music's by like one dude. I've never I've never heard of him, but
awesome.
like it's like early on, like they set the tone, and the music's both authentic and feels big and cinematic when it needs to, and it's got like some good leitmotif stuff going on. I feel like they can bring a theme back here and there. It's like
right on.
It's good. Like it doesn't feel like it's made by a small studio, by a few people sort of cobbling something together out of the Crytek engine. It feels like a proper AAA game in a lot of places, and I mean, I'm pretty impressed by it in terms of the ambition and how well it's pulling off the weird little systems it wants to integrate. And so far, I haven't run into anything where it made me angry or want to stop playing was frustrating. Maybe that will happen later. I mean, there was a point where like I just decided to take a shortcut down a hill and I sprained my ankles. And I was like, and it didn't like, it doesn't slow
like that.
It doesn't slow you down. It doesn't like make you limp the whole rest of the way.
Yeah.
But I was like, but it's like if you
just had to deal with anything later on because of that.
Well, you don't. I mean,
like
but you go to sleep and you're fine in the morning.
You don't walk or run slower?
Not.
All right, everyone. So sorry that our Kingdom Come Deliverance discussion ended a little abruptly. Our Tricaster completely crashed. The stream went dead. We stopped everything down. We went and checked out the file. The file is there, but I don't know.
It's there. It's a 5 gigabyte file. It didn't do that thing. It didn't close the book quite nicely, and so QuickTime's like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
But
we couldn't get the file to play.
I'm not with QuickTime, but QuickTime's an idiot. Like I'm confident we can pull the video out of that.
So anyway, if this archive ends up going up later, you'll know why. We're gonna have to mess with the file a little bit. No matter what, it's gonna delay the show being archived. So
anyway, Kingdom Come Deliverance. It's a lot of stuff in it. Play it if you like complicated things and swords and eating.
Yeah, and we'll be back next week to talk about it more because I'm going to end up playing it after what Matt said about it. So
and clearly I need to play more of it to kind of get more into the meat of what it is past what turned out to be a 4-hour prologue. So.
So it's time for our trailer of the week. It was a terrible week for trailers, I have to say. No really big debuts this week. They did announce The Surge 2 this week, which I'm surprised they're making a sequel to that.
Sure, why not?
But they did not release a trailer for that. So I actually dug up a trailer for a really cool indie game that was announced this week, and it is called Smoke and Sacrifice. It is an action RPG crossed with survival elements with a hand-drawn art style. Let's roll it. What do you think of that, Matt?
Nice art.
Yeah, the art's crazy. The animation's very stiff. It's like 2 frames for every sword slash.
It kind of reminds me of Don't Starve.
Yeah, it does look a lot like that. It's got that kind of dirty, grimy art style to it. So anyway, we did ask for questions in the chat after the Tricaster crash. So we're not going to do live questions, but we do have a bunch loaded up. So we're going to go through a few of them. Let's see. Here's one from W. Matthew, who always asks great questions. Do you think Disney might approach Arc System Works to do a Marvel fighting game since Capcom dropped the ball so badly?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I would think that the corporate communication channels between Marvel and Capcom are there, and they know who each other are and how to treat the license and stuff. And the Marvel vs. Capcom is the brand. Really here, so I think they would stick with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you want to get too hasty here.
Yeah.
It's like you've had a good thing going for a long time. One misstep, I don't think, completely dooms it. We did kind of mention earlier, does this destroy the IP? But you were very quick to say, if you fix it, the fans will come right back. Right. So, yeah, I would agree with that.
The fans want to like the game.
Yeah.
They just couldn't like this one.
Yeah,
and
for good reason.
And basically, you tried to do one on you tried to get away with a fast one. You tried to pull fast one, get away with making a Marvel game on the cheap, and you didn't get away with it.
Yep.
So your 2 options are to throw it in the vault for another 10 years, or try again and do it right this time. And I hope they try it again and do it right this time.
I wouldn't be surprised if they put it in the vault, though.
No, I would not be surprised if they did that either.
Let's see. Next from Dazzle369. Will Sega ever resurrect the Dreamcast generation of hardware and software? So you think he's asking about maybe a Dreamcast Mini?
Yeah, no.
You think it'll never happen?
No. And I would say they have resurrected the software to a lot of the Dreamcast games are available.
Dreamcast collections.
Yeah, you can on Steam, and there's been some digitally released stuff like Crazy Taxi and stuff like that on several of the systems.
Now,
everything. Yeah, you can play Crazy Taxi on your phone. I mean, have they? And we got a Shenmue sequel coming. Like,
is there a single Dreamcast game that hasn't been playable on another platform afterwards?
Not a good one, maybe. I'm trying to think. I mean, there was like the little, stuff like Blue Stinger or Ill Bleed, or
that weren't good in the first place.
Yeah, they were interesting, I guess I'd say.
I think that's a stretch for Blue Stinger.
Yeah,
that game was just bad.
I mean, I have a whole lot of damn Dreamcast games, but most of it's moved forward. A lot of it was fighting games. All those clearly, obviously, have moved forward in subsequent generations to be playable on other systems. I don't know. I mean, I guess like if you're really, something like Spike Out maybe, or even stuff like Bangai-O got onto other systems.
It did,
there's not a lot. I mean, Jet Grind Radio you can play on just about everything else.
Wait, there's one Capcom fighting game that maybe we haven't just seen them bring back since then. It's I can't remember the name of it. I'm gonna hate myself whenever I remember it. It's like that arena brawl that takes place inside.
Like Power Stone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Power Stone. I thought Power Stone
Have they made another one?
I think Power Stone got a PSP release or something. Like the Power Stone came out.
People
again
have been asking for a Power Stone for a while.
It's weird that Power Stone. You want to build some hype for Marvel vs. Capcom 4? Put a Power Stone character in there.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot. Power Stone and Spike Out are kind of the lost Capcom franchises from the Dreamcast era, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's really going to move
a lot
the needle.
A lot of the Dreamcast games even came to like the GameCube and
yeah, like Sega definitely cannibalized the library pretty thoroughly. Yeah. If it was worth playing, it's probably on another system somewhere.
Would you buy a Dreamcast Micro though?
No,
I would.
I still have my Dreamcast and all the games, so
do I.
I wouldn't.
I would
really
just buy it for the novelty. I still have a Super Nintendo, and I still bought the SNES Classic.
I might. You know what actually showed up yesterday? I forgot I ordered the analog Super NT.
Oh, you did?
I got one.
That's getting great reviews, man.
It's not
$190 worth.
Yeah, looks nice.
Yeah,
I haven't plugged it in yet. I don't have a damn controller. It didn't come with a controller.
You also think, though, with these micro consoles, you get the HDMI out. It makes it easier to hook it up with modern.
Well, the NT is interesting in the sense that it's the actual. It's literally displaying the actual cartridge at 1080p. It's not an emulator. It's nice. Yeah. It's like, it's very clever. Would I buy a Dreamcast that did that? Yeah, probably.
I would definitely.
Especially if it played the discs, because I have all the discs.
That would be sweet. Highly unlikely, but
yeah. So I don't know. I did see that kind of fan mock-up of like a Dreamcast-themed Xbox One.
Yeah,
you see that?
It looks awesome. Yeah,
yeah, it's cool. It was totally fake, but like I would buy that.
That is making the rounds, people.
Yeah.
It's fake. There's a mock-up of an Xbox One that looks like a Dreamcast.
Yeah, but just so you know, Microsoft, if you make that controller, I will buy it.
Absolutely, I will. Yeah, no problem. No questions asked. From Mike's Q, do you think that there is any chance Capcom can or will bring back Dragon's Dogma?
Well, they got the online one in Japan.
Dragon's Dogma Online in Japan, yeah. It's like a huge game there.
Yeah, and I figure...
They're putting out expansions for that like every few months.
I figure it might... I don't think we've seen the last of it. At the very least, they knew enough to put it on every existing system you could imagine. I mean, hell, I wouldn't be totally shocked to see Dark Arisen hit the Switch.
Yeah, you're right. More likely in Japan maybe than here.
But I think that, Dragon's Dogma is kind of an underrated, well, not underrated, because if you play it, you generally rate it pretty well, but like it's unknown a little bit.
It's flown under the radar.
I actually gave it to my brother-in-law for Christmas because I saw it at Fry's, I think. I'm like, oh, yeah, and he was like, maybe, I guess. He was playing Fallout 4. He put it in, I didn't see him play anything else the rest of the time I was up there.
It's a good game.
He got completely sucked into it. It
flew under the radar.
And even he's pretty well informed. I don't think he'd ever heard of it. He's just like, what the hell is this? I've never heard. And I was like, but look, if you're into that kind of thing, you put that game in somebody's hands, they're gonna dig it. Like it's a solid piece of work.
I think the bigger question is deep down, what the hell happened to that game? I think at this point it's just dead.
Yeah, it feels like that was like some kind of demo that never became anything else.
Yeah, they couldn't get it together as a game. I think that's the better question. Now, what the heck happened to that? Justin Horman, do you think PUBG will ever go free to play? Since it seems like Fortnite is starting to gain/overtake them in players, and PUBG actually had a drop in players recently. Or is it too big a game and the sales too much for them to consider that?
I don't think they need to worry about it immediately, but I think it could happen eventually.
I think it absolutely will happen eventually. Yeah, because what you're going to see is all these Battle Royale games, Fortnite's already figured out the formula.
Yeah.
If you're free,
you win.
You win. And you make so much money off the cosmetics that it doesn't ultimately matter. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think ultimately PUBG will be free to play. Maybe 2 years from now, because they still have to put out the PS4 version.
Right.
They still have to make their money off of that.
They still have to put out 1.0 on Xbox.
Right. So I think once that happens, maybe a year after that, then you'll get the free-to-play version.
But they're going to have to come up with a pretty good thing to give the people that paid for it.
Exactly. They'll just give them some crazy gun or some hat that they can wear that everybody you paid for it.
Then pile of loot boxes.
Yeah, or whatever. They'll figure out a way to make it right. I mean, they'll have to rejigger the whole game as well, obviously, once it goes free to play. But I think eventually it will. Absolutely. A couple more here. From Lynn Jeff 99. How many hours a day do you play video games? How many hours a day do you sleep? For me, it's the nightly struggle of whether or not I should sleep or play video games. Every day I play games. Typically, I play games every day for probably, all told, between the time I spend throughout the day and any time I spend later at night, probably like 4 or 5 hours, probably. Mm-hmm. I sleep 5 to 6 hours a night.
It depends. Like some days I won't play anything, or I'll play very little, and some days I'll just dive in. So I can play anywhere from 30 minutes in a day to 8 hours in a day.
Oh, I've played in a day games for 20-some hours in one day.
But on average, I would say probably 2 or 3 hours a day. If I have something worthwhile to play, because sometimes it's I need to do something that involves buttons, you know, and I just play a little thing and that's it,
Yeah.
And sleep, I don't know. I probably sleep about 7 hours a night.
I get 5 or 6 typically. Tonight, I'll get a little more. I'll sleep in a little bit on Saturday. I used to not on Sundays because football starts at 10 a.m. here, and I get up early to get my fantasy football teams going. So usually Friday night, Saturday morning is a time where I actually get at least 7. But I'm so conditioned now to sleeping 5 or 6 hours, I really can't sleep more than 7 hours. Over the holidays, I did get it to the point where at the end of the holidays, I was sleeping 8.5. But I'm already back in the swing of not getting as much sleep, and my eyes just pop open, and I just can't go back to sleep. So I should sleep more. Definitely. It's going to cost me whenever I'm in my 60s or 70s, if I make it that far. Last one. Mitchell is alive. Amongst all the chatter of Microsoft potentially buying EA last week, it had me thinking of companies that would be wise for MS to acquire. What publisher or developers do you think Microsoft would have the most success with should they decide to acquire such a large company? If Microsoft did purchase EA, are there any franchises that you would believe would be in better hands with MS? So we talked about EA last week. Mm-hmm. We already covered that on GameFace. But we will answer any other publishers or developers we think would be a good purchase. I'll start with Ubisoft. I think that would be a really wise purchase. I think Ubisoft might be open to that purchase too, considering right now Vivendi's trying to just outright hostile takeover them. So I would say Ubisoft. Ubisoft's games, I feel like, really came into their own on Xbox 360. Most people played Ubisoft's games when Ubisoft went from kind of a mid-range third-party publisher to kind of top tier. Most people were playing those games on Xbox 360. I think it's a natural fit. I don't think people would be like, that's weird. And I think it also is the type of games that Xbox gamers typically go for. So if I had to pick one, I would say Ubisoft.
I wouldn't go that huge, but I would, if I were Microsoft, I would buy From Software and make Dark Souls an Xbox exclusive.
That'd be a lot cheaper, for sure.
It's dirty pool.
It is dirty pool, but that's business. That's the way it goes.
It'd sell some Xboxes.
It absolutely would. All right, so that's it for GameFace 116. This may be the only part of GameFace 116 you actually see.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can figure out the file.
I'm pretty sure it's in there. The file is 5 gigabytes. There's video information in that file.
It's just parsing it and getting it out. We'll see.
Yeah.
But we're going to do our best to try to get it up, and no matter what, it's going to be delayed. So my apologies in advance that you're getting to see this. It's probably going to be Sunday, I'm guessing, by the time you're actually seeing this. But
although they'll be seeing this well after that, so it's not an apology in advance.
Yeah. To me, it's an apology.
You're apologizing in advance, but they're not going to see it until after it happens.
Right. So it's just an apology.
It's like time dilation. Like some kind of Einsteinian relativity shit.
Thanks for the people who were on the stream before it crashed and our Tricaster crashed. That's just a whole other thing I have to worry about now is like, what's wrong with the Tricaster?
Yeah, I've never done that before.
Never, ever. In all the hundreds of hours we've used that thing, nothing like this has happened. So, got to get to the bottom of it. But thank you guys for watching. Thanks for supporting us on Patreon. We could use your support on Patreon, so if this ends up on YouTube, just kick us $1 a month. It'd be so simple to solve all our problems. Even if half of our subscribers on YouTube just gave us $1 a month, we'd be golden. Golden. We'd be good. We'd be creating new shows. It's so easy. It's just $1. So
just $1 a month, you can feed a Satterfield.
Seriously, it would completely change our business. It's just $1 leap of faith. That's all we need. So if you can find it in the kindness of your heart to help us out, that would be great. So with that, hopefully you guys will get to see this. GameFace is up and out.